Okay, Drew, I think we can jump in with introductions. If you could just start again by directing people to the links that are pinned at the top of the spaces, um, and kind of best practices in using this model of Twitter Spaces being pumped into the metaverse or spatial space, so everyone's on the same page. I'll pass it
You
over to you
got it.
now.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Kelsey. It's an absolute pleasure to be here. So my name is Drew Simon. I'm the founder of cryptoaltruism.org. And I'm so excited to be invited by ChangeDAO to co-host this amazing experience that is taking place on both Twitter Spaces and through Spatial. So to access the Spatial, you simply do change.gallery in your browser, and then it'll bring you right to the page where you can then see the amazing boards that our changemakers have put together. One thing to note is a housekeeping item. If you are on both Spatial and Twitter Spaces, you might want to make sure that you're muting the Spatial tab on your browser so that you're not getting an echo and hearing the audio coming from multiple places at once, as we are also pumping the audio into the Spatial space. So just make sure that you're muting the Spatial page if you are indeed joining via Spatial as well, which you definitely should. So big thank you to everyone that's here and made it so far. We're so excited to really elevate 7 extraordinary folks, change makers that are demonstrating how NFTs truly can be a force for change. And so this experience has really been a long time coming, and it started back in NFT NYC in November 2021 when ChangeDAO launched its contest to seek out 7 stories of social change, and 7 extraordinary stories, each corresponding with one of ChangeDAO's 7 areas of social change. So here we are today, several months later. We have our amazing roster of 7 change makers, and we're excited to really shine a light on them and to elevate their stories today. So before I go any further, I'd like to bring up Kelsey just to share a little bit about yourself, introduce yourself, and then we'll go from there.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you again, Drew, for all of the work that you've done on the project, and for hosting today. We very much appreciate it. My name is Kelsey Driscoll. I am the GM of ChangeDAO. What that means is I'm part of the core team, and I oversee and lead our front-end operations. Thank you again for everyone who's called in and who is joining us. We're beyond thrilled to be presenting our first 7 change makers to our community and hearing their stories today of how they're using NFTs as a force for good. So for those of you on the call who are unfamiliar with ChangeDAO, we are an NFT marketplace for social change art with the design goal of creating an on-chain institution for the next 10,000 years. In November, during NFT NYC, as Drew mentioned, we held an in-person GM coffee event where we led a design thinking session with fellow changemakers to define our 7 areas of social change. And you can see that in the word cloud in our spatial change gallery. And also, each of our change makers today are representing one of those areas. We launched a contest at NFT NYC to identify our first 7 change makers based on those 7 community-defined areas of social change. And they won as well a Genesis NFT for ChangeDAO to be part of this movement. So our event today is meant to showcase the work of those 7 and elevate their stories to our greater community. So before we begin, first and foremost, I want to express our deep appreciation for everyone who made this event possible. Drew Simon, leader of Crypto Altruism, who just introduced himself, also a ChangeDAO contributor and RMC for today's event. Also a big shout out to our build crew. Neckbeard, or Zach from I'm Not Art, Emma, and honestly the whole I'm Not Art crew. Thank you for your guidance, your insight, your hard work, your feedback as we've been pulling this together. Soul Monsta, who is one of our change makers, also a contributor to ChangeDAO. She has worked really hard in organizing and building out the space, so thank you. Diego, who you've heard from, our 3D Just QC. He is our AV guru. He is helping us record and pump the Twitter spaces into the spatial to make this all happen, so that we can have this different and experiential event together. Brian Brinkman, ChangeDAO's spokes artist, who you'll hear from in a little bit later, and not to mention an award-winning NFT artist. We thank you a lot for helping us stand up this space and tell our story as an organization. So now, with that said, I'm gonna, pass it back to you, Drew, so we can actually start the fun stuff.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Kelsey, for the introduction, for all the great work you've done on bringing this together, and for giving a little background on how this all came to be, starting back with the NFT NYC and the GM Coffee event. So a couple of housekeeping items again, just to remind folks to get on the spatial page, ChangeDAO Gallery in your browser or mobile device. And just one request as well, that little button down on the bottom right there with the tweets, make sure to hit the retweet button there to share this. We are 100% a grassroots organization. It's all word of mouth to help elevate stories of these amazing change makers by hitting that button and sharing it with your followers. So we also have a PO app available for the experience, which we'll announce a few times throughout the Twitter space, with the Twitter space starting right now. So if you have the mobile app, tap on secret keyword and enter ChangeDAO 7 stories. So that's all one word. Or email us a screenshot from your phone of the metaverse right now to hello@changedao.org and we'll ship it to you. So we'll go through this a couple times throughout, but we do have a PO app for this experience that we want to make sure that you guys all get as well. So to start things off, before we dive a bit deeper, I want to invite someone up to speak who's really been essential in making this event happen. He's the mastermind between coordinating the Twitter space, the spatial space, and just making sure everything runs seamlessly. So Diego, why don't you share a few words? Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, hi, and thank you again, guys, for hosting this event, bringing the voices of artists that are trying to make change visible and audible for people out there in the world, especially through these new mediums that we have, such as spatial. So yeah, just a bit about me. I got into the NFT space a couple months ago. I've always been interested in kind of like 3D modeling, VR, creating, which has kind of culminated into what we are all calling the metaverse now, right? So naturally, I kind of did some research, found spatial, got to meet the fine people over there, such as Fine Spray Art, David All, and ever since then, just kind of like, chatting with other individuals, trying to make some change in the world for the good, connecting others, and just trying to, be the change you want to see in the world.
Fantastic. That's great. Thank you, Diego. Really, really appreciated. So before we get into the change makers who are really the stars of the show today, I want to invite up some of the core team folks from ChangeDAO to tell us a little bit about themselves and their roles. And to start things off, I want to invite up Brian Brinkman, who's our spokes artist for ChangeDAO, to say a little bit about himself and his role with ChangeDAO. So Brian, welcome.
Hello. Thank you, Drew. And thank you for everybody in the space, both on Twitter and in the virtual spatial gallery. So my name is Brian Brinkman. I'm an NFT artist in the space. I've been in the space for about 2 years now, but I would say last summer I connected with David and ChangeDAO, and we started kind of working with a whole bunch of awesome people to build this platform to help artists, talk about causes they care about, create artwork around those ideas, and create a mechanism for them to sell that artwork in a way that can benefit those causes. And so we've been grinding on this for a long time. Some of you might have came to our talk at NFT NYC. And then, I think that today is a next step for us where we can start to talk about these changes and these causes and these change makers. And it's really exciting. And I'm super proud of everyone involved, especially all the change makers and especially everyone that put together this event, because it's really amazing. If anybody in here has not visited the Spatial Gallery yet, I highly recommend it. It is fantastic. And thank you for having me. I'll be here throughout the show, but I don't want to take up too much time because this is about everybody else.
Great. Thank you, Brian. And we'll hear from Brian again for sure. Huge thank you to Brian for all the work he's done in pulling us all together. Wouldn't have been able to do it without you, Brian. So thank you. All right. So next up, we're going to bring up David All, who's the founder of ChangeDAO, to speak a little bit about himself, introduce and talk about his experience with ChangeDAO and how ChangeDAO is serving change makers in powerful new ways. So David, welcome.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Thanks everyone for being on the call. I've been thinking a lot about what's happening in Ukraine right now and just the world in general and how it's just going to keep spreading. And I was thinking like maybe a moment of silence or something like that would be powerful. And And then I was thinking, wait a second, that's like the opposite of saying something and being vocal and being loud and being together and being here in this space and in this moment together. And wherever we are in the world, it just feels like we're all starting to feel like one unified community. And that's what ChangeDAO is about. We're so overly just over the moon excited to begin the ChangeDAO conversation with stories. Stories are so essential. I mean, there is nothing to mint in this gallery. You're not going to see any sort of stealth drops. There's nothing like that. This is just about the experience of change making. And we're starting with the origins of change movements, and that's the change maker themselves. So, yeah, thanks to all the builders. I mean, Soul Monster really and Neckbeard and 3D Just QC. Love working with you, dude. It's just so amazing how and Drew and Kelsey, thanks so much as well. This is just like mind blowing for me. I've organized like over 50 events like this around storytelling, and this one feels so powerful, so special, so timely, and just man, what a great moment to be here with you all.
Great. Well, thank you so much, David, and some great words there. And yeah, it's a really obviously challenging time around the world with everything going on in Ukraine, and something that I've been thinking a lot about today. And hopefully, I can just we can have a really positive experience today to be reminded of some of the good in the world too, and how NFTs can really be a force for change too, and how these change makers that we're going to be elevating throughout this show are really doing some amazing, extraordinary things in the world. So before we invite up our first change maker, which is Anya, and Anya, if you're on here, if you could just make sure that you request speaking privileges so we can get you all set up and ready to go. I see that Peter's in here as well, who's another core member of the team. So maybe Peter, will invite you up to speak as well if that's something you're interested in, if you just want to request speaking privileges. I also see that we have someone here from the spatial team as well, which is really exciting. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Hey, how's it going? This is Tyrone from Spatial. 3D Just QC has been a long-time follower for us and has followed our spaces and has built spaces. So I'm really glad to see, ChangeDAO evolve into this. Since the first time we saw you guys put something into Spatial. So it's really exciting to see it progress, and we're proud to be able to join along, lend a hand if we can.
Great. Well, thank you so much for being here. Really appreciate it. We've been so amazed with the spatial platform, and it's really been a really cool, powerful place for us to highlight the changemaker. So again, change.gallery to go there and check that out. And just bear with us for 1 minute right now as we are working to get our first changemaker up on the stage here. So just bear with us for 1 moment. All right, and while we're waiting, maybe we'll bring up Aaron first, if that's okay, Aaron. Aaron Huey is another one of our change makers. So we might just make a bit of a shift here. Just a reminder, if you want to see the schedule for the speakers for the event, just make sure to check out the pinned tweets at the top here. I'm just going to send an invite to Aaron Huey, who is one of our change makers. We're just going to do a little bit of a switcheroo here and bring Aaron up first while we get Anya set up on Twitter Spaces. So just give us 1 moment as we get that all set up, and then we are excited to dive right in. Okay, and there's Aaron. Aaron, thank you so much for being here. How are you doing today?
Hey, what's up? Thank you so much. Doing great.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. Good, good. It's a pleasure to have you here. So Aaron is one of our change makers. Can't be more excited to share with you the amazing story behind his work. He brings with him so much great experience and passion. So a little backstory. I'll give a bit of an intro here to Aaron, and then I'm going to do a bit of a Q&A with you, Aaron.
Right.
There's 3 or 4 questions we're going to go through to learn about your story and to really elevate you. So Aaron Huey, for those who don't know him, is a National Geographic photographer and founder and creative director of amplifier.org. As a photographer, Huey has created over 30 stories for the National Geographic magazines, which is incredible, including several cover stories. So Huey's Bare Ears Virtual Museum VR experience promoted the protection of sacred lands and won a Webby for Best VR Interactive Design, and is being made into augmented reality lessons in metaverse spaces to teach pre-colonial history in K-12 schools across the country. Huey continues to build with collaborators in many mediums beyond traditional photography through his art and advocacy nonprofit Amplifier. And Huey was recently named a Stanford Starling Lab Fellow working on journalistic best practices in Web3. Wow, so that is quite the resume that you have there, Aaron. Absolute pleasure to have you here. So, Aaron, tell me, to start things off, how did you go from National Geographic to street art collaborations, Shepard Fairey, and founding of Amplifier? So tell me a little bit about your journey and how you got from National Geographic to where you are today.
Thanks so much. That's a great question. That was like a really nerve-wracking move for me, kind of at the moment, because with editorial photojournalism, we were always told that you weren't supposed to pick sides, but when you're working on stories with big communities where there are clear sides to be chosen, stories like that really needed to have outlets outside of the magazines. And I was working on stories at the time around indigenous treaty rights and land rights that National Geographic really couldn't take stances on, but the people wanted stances taken on them. And so the dream was to find artists to collaborate with, to bypass magazines and traditional distribution routes and take messages from communities straight into the streets. And I had done a TED Talk around that time, and Shepard Fairey had seen it. And so had Ernesto Urena and a bunch of other artists. And they all agreed to help turn that photography and those messages into street art, to just start putting up in the streets. And that was really the birth of what became amplifier.org, and an organization with a portfolio of 10,000 artists working on social and environmental justice topics around the world.
Wow, that's amazing. So that is quite the journey that got you here. So tell me more about what made you want to start working with new mediums like AR and VR and now metaverse storytelling. That's quite the shift that you've made.
Yeah, it was very similar to what started the move into doing collaborations in street art. It was that a ceiling presented itself where the work needed to go further. It needed to either reach new audiences or embrace new technology to move that story to new spaces. And that started to happen with other Nat Geo stories where I felt like, the writing in a traditional editorial piece, and it's not National Geographic's fault or any editorial publication's fault per se, it's just the nature of a written story where you can only have a couple of perspectives in a story or the reader gets lost. Well, I was telling stories that needed to have a lot of voice, like literal voice. We needed to be able to hear people and see them in more than just a JPEG with a caption. And so that led to the creation of VR experiences that got a lot more of that community voice in, a lot more of the words and ideas and thoughts straight from communities that were unfiltered, essentially. And as far as like the evolution of AR, VR, metaverse, it's just as each new technology presents itself and we have the ability to build layers in those spaces, it just deepens the engagement and it gives us more ways to interact with those communities, for those communities to tell their stories. So I'm always trying to find new technology to apply to these practices.
Yeah, I absolutely love that. Like, and you're so right. It deepens the engagement, is what you mentioned, right?
Yeah.
Having these opportunities for VR and AR and, and the metaverse more generally is really it's creating new ways for folks to engage, to tell their short stories, to share important stories and meaningful messaging. So it seems like you're doing just that in the work that you're doing, which is really exciting. So I'm going to go a little bit off the script here because I know that your area that your area of social change that you were selected for the contest is mental health and well-being. So tell me a little bit what that means to me and why that's important to you.
That has really turned out to be, has really risen to the surface for me as maybe the most crucial thing to work on because, as we saw today, like we are going to continue to have essentially an unending cascade of crises because we are human beings. We are going to have more wars. We're going to have more school shootings. We're going to have more pandemics. We're going to have another nasty, nasty political cycle and then another and another. And working with Amplifier and working on all of these causes, what became clear to me working in the trenches of movements and movement moments was that the thing we maybe need the most is to really be able to learn how to take care of ourselves, our mental health, our physicality, and to take care of others around us so that we can survive all of these crises. Because if we can't take care of ourselves and our family and our children and each other, and especially like start talking to students in middle schools and high schools about their mental health and about how they're feeling, then we're not going to be able to navigate situations like a new world war or the next pandemic. And I needed that myself to be able to understand strategies for just being okay, or being okay with not being okay, I should say as well.
Absolutely. And I think that, today I know a lot of people are probably struggling with their mental health. And,
Yeah.
From my experience, community is just one of the ways that we can really support each other and come together and be there for each other during these challenging times. And so I think you're spot on with that. So that's fantastic. So, Aaron, as we wrap up our conversation and we kind of look forward, tell me a little bit about what collaborations you're working on, why collaboration is so important in your practice, and what you have coming up.
Yeah, I mean, my skills, like at a certain point, hit a limit, whether it's like a technology I don't understand or a style I'd like to incorporate that is not my own style. I like to work on everything really collaboratively, from, doing work with somebody like Shepard Fairey or Ernesto Urena, or, an artist like Killer Acid, or even my 6-year-old. I'm working on a collaboration with my 6-year-old, because all of these push me to reimagine mediums, and to see in a way that I can't see by myself. I like to be surprised by those combinations of ideas, of bringing one piece that's uniquely mine and joining that together with something that's uniquely another creator's. I think I've never been disappointed. It always exponentially increases the power and potential of that piece. And really, I'm less and less interested in doing projects that are not collaborative.
So you're doing a collaboration with your 6-year-old. That's pretty cool. Do you mind telling me a little bit about that? I mean, we have a couple minutes here, so tell me more about that. That's really cool.
It's one of the ones I'm most excited about. It is an NFT project. My 6-year-old has been making Lego heads at the dining room table every night, and I noticed that they all have the pixel dimension that they could be wearable as voxel art, as heads. And so we are now quite deep in a collection of head replacements for if you get tired of what's in your own head. And the proceeds from a project like this would fund a project, let's say through Amplifier, on mental health and well-being in K to 12 classrooms, resources for those classrooms. But I look at everything that my children do, and I'm like, ooh, I could do that with him, and we could try a thing that like really kind of ups the game on that. And I think of it with everything, with my 12-year-old and the work he's doing with microscopes and cameras. And I look at every artist that way, and including my children.
That's really cool how you're looking at, finding ways that technology can really elevate things that the children are already doing and that they're really excited about, and getting them excited about new technologies as well. So sound like a pretty awesome dad. So kudos to you for the work you're doing there.
Yeah, I've got my 12-year-old working working on voxel stuff. He's really excited about that, using his computer to do that.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
well, that's great. Well, thanks for all you've shared so far. I'm going to put you on the spot one last time. Is that all right?
Yeah, sure.
Great. Okay. So at ChangeDAO, one of the big things, the philosophy is that NFTs can really be a force for change. What does that mean for you? How do you think that NFTs will be a force for change in the future?
Well, I mean, just in the most obvious way, we can, obviously through these smart contracts, divide up the fees so that we can fund projects. I've seen incredible amounts of money go towards the causes that matter, and that's what Amplifier does. I mean, it's what my entire nonprofit has been working on with art and advocacy for the last 10 years. And so this is a natural continuation of that we can use art and technology in this way to support the movements and creators we care about. So it's a perfect natural extension of everything I've done for, the last 10 or 15 years.
Amazing. Well, Aaron, thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure having you here. Your experience, your story, so powerful. Any final words you want to leave us with as we wrap up the Q&A for today?
No, I'm so excited to hear from Anya, one of my collaborators in the Wide Awakes. Go, Anya. Woo!
Amazing. That's great. Yeah. And so we'll definitely have Anya up in a second. Aaron, it's been a pleasure to start with you on this. Thank you so much for being a part of this, for everything you're doing. Also, if you are on the spatial space, and again, to get there, change.gallery in your browser or mobile device, make sure to check out Aaron's board. Some of the change makers have QR codes on their board as well, so you can be directed to learn more about their work and their stories. But that's one way you can engage with the change makers, is to check out the boards that they put together on the spatial space. So one other thing just to mention too, thank you again, Aaron. It was an absolute pleasure having you here today. Really appreciate it. Just one more housekeeping item as we, before we move on to Anya. We are getting some requests for speakers, and that's great. We love the engagement. Please note that we are holding off on taking questions from the audience at the moment, just because we're making trying our best to focus on highlighting and elevating the change makers and making sure that we can stick to our schedule. We're going to try to open things up for questions a bit later on. So stay tuned, and we'll announce that if there's an opportunity to take some questions from the audience a bit later on. Again, appreciate the engagement and the folks looking to engage. We just want to make sure we're focusing on elevating the change makers right now. That's great. Okay, so big thank you again to Aaron. Pleasure to have you here. Can't wait to see what you do and how you move forward after from National Geographic to Amplifier and to what's next. And maybe this collaboration with your 6-year-old will really take off as well. So we'll have to keep an eye on that. So thank you, Aaron. Okay, so we're going to move right along then. We are right on track here. And thank you, Anya and Aaron, for the flexibility here. We had to make a couple little changes. For those that just joined in, welcome. We're just finished off our first conversation with Aaron, and we're going to welcome up Anya in a second. Before we do that, David, do you want to share a little bit about the PO app and how folks can gain access to that?
Hey guys, how's it going? Yeah, I actually I was just in the metaverse for that entire experience. I plugged in the Oculus and I was just walking around checking everything out. I mean, it's just so amazing how like visceral it feels when you're inside of that space and someone is sharing their story. And everyone was sitting there looking at Aaron Huey's board, and that was just so dope. So yeah, if you're listening to this right now, we have a Pope. So you can grab it. Make sure you have the app on your phone, and the secret keyword is ChangeDAO 7 stories, all one word and the number 7. If you have no idea what we're talking about when we say Pope and secret keywords, you can also take a screenshot of either the fact that you're in the space, circle it, and email us with your ETH address to hello@changedao.org. Back over to you, Drew. Thanks, everyone.
Excellent. Thank you, David. And don't worry if you didn't catch it right there. We're going to make sure to mention this a couple more times throughout the show so you can gain access to that. Great. Okay, so we're going to move right along then, and we're going to welcome up our next speaker, who is Anya. So I'm going to give a bit of an introduction to Anya, and then we'll jump into the Q&A. So Anya Ayungchi is a fashion designer, social entrepreneur, and strategist from Trinidad and Tobago. She is best known as winner of Project Runway Season 9, and having developed several businesses over the past decade geared towards the advancement of the Caribbean creative community, she now focuses her time on social innovation initiatives that aim to bridge the gap between Caribbean talent and global opportunities. She has a particular passion for empowering Caribbean creatives, small business owners, and at-risk women, and through her platform Wildflower is pioneering the NFT and digital fashion space. So Anya is our change maker for the supply chain area of change. And welcome, Anya. A pleasure to have you here today.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here.
Great, and thank you for your flexibility as we worked out the tech stuff. That's how these things go, and I appreciate everyone's flexibility and patience with those things. So let's just jump right into it. Anya, tell me a little bit about Wildflower and the work that you're doing, and with that and pioneering the NFT and digital fashion space, which sounds fascinating. So tell me a little bit about that.
Sure. So as you mentioned, my background is as a fashion designer. And over the years, I have sort of segued from doing traditional fashion into merging social impact with the opportunities that I've had ever since winning Project Runway. I've wanted to really leverage the platform that I gained from winning that show to bring as many opportunities as I could to the Caribbean talent, like you mentioned in the introduction. So Wildflower, after going to Burning Man a couple of years ago and having designed for Carnival in Trinidad for many years, I was really inspired to create a product that is sort of inherently Caribbean, but still globally positioned for festivals. And we we launched Wildflower in 2020, about 6 weeks before the pandemic really started, which meant that we had to kind of take a step back and assess exactly how can we continue with the mission of empowering women through the clothing line. And over that time, over the last 2 years, of course, this entire world of metaverse fashion has just metaverse activities in general, but recognizing that merging festival fashion with the metaverse world and being able to sell physical and digital items through this mechanism now like incredibly enhances the innovation of what we can do through the brand. And very organically, and with my collaborators, as Huey mentioned, this has been really collaborative work. I reached a ceiling very quickly in my expertise in this area, and so a couple of my collaborators are actually listening in, one of whom, Stephen Hadid, was the reason I even applied to become a change maker. So I'm so grateful for his prodding, because here I am to be able to do this work and to do it on behalf, I think, of the Caribbean creative community through the lens of this fashion innovation brand, Wildflower.
That's great. Thank you, Anya. And I sense a theme here of collaboration, which is great. I think, to me, I've always thought that's one of the most powerful things about the Web3 space is the community around it, how it's really about collaboration and inclusion and not competition. We're all in this together, and all ships rise in the tide, or whatever the saying is. And I think that that's one of the most powerful things about this space. So that's great to hear, Anya. So I understand that as part of Wildflower, you have a women's livelihood initiative called Spool. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Absolutely, yes. So Spool is a training program for women who are both Venezuelan descent and Trinidadian descent. In Trinidad, many people may know, we have quite an influx of Venezuelan migrants into the country. We're only 7 miles off the coast of Venezuela, so we have become host to this community. And as I mentioned, Carnival is a very big industry in the Caribbean, and Trinidad is the hub of it. So in fact, that's where Huey and I met many years ago. It just so happens to be Carnival time right now. But essentially what we're doing is bridging the need for more skilled workforce in the highly specialized area of Carnival production as well as fashion production. And we're teaching these skills to women who honestly come here with quite a lot of skill already. So it's sort of a refinement of that skill. And so we're building a sort of very fully fleshed out, hybridized online and offline training program that is called Spool, and we are also, and it's directly linked to the Wildflower platform, where revenue from Wildflower goes directly to Spool. So it's sort of an ecosystem of supporting freedom, economic freedom for the women who produce the clothes, creative expression and freedom of the ones who wear the clothes, and of course, creative freedom of the ones who actually create and design the clothes. So there's a through line there of freedom that we really stand for and try our best to embed in everything we do.
That's fantastic. Well, thank you for the great work you're doing there. And it sounds like a really impactful project that's having a real positive impact on the livelihoods of women in the Caribbean. So that's fantastic. So speaking more broadly, I'm curious to hear your thoughts on this. How do you see NFTs supporting the economic empowerment of women? And what are some of the use cases you see when it comes to NFTs as a tool for economic empowerment?
Well, in our specific case, we are using NFTs to expand our revenue earning potential as a brand, as well as Huey mentioned, being able to split the profits from these sales ad infinitum across the collaborators who have involved in the creation of the NFTs, but of course also the social impact initiative that they're tied to. So it adds a revenue stream to the funding of the initiative that we just mentioned. But I think NFTs in general, in the work that we're doing with Caribbean creatives outside of also Spool, building more opportunities for NFTs to be held by artists, and for artists to actually become collectors, and for Korean people in general to sort of enter this space and own and sell and buy NFTs themselves. It creates an entirely different mechanism for artists in a way that did not exist before. And I think having identities sort of solidified on the blockchain in a way that can allow for many people who are disenfranchised, like this population of migrants that we mentioned, is another aspect of this that, of course, I'm not that expert at, but I definitely recognize that there's a whole slew of opportunity from an identification standpoint that I think is going to become really crucial for disenfranchised migrant populations like the ones that we work with here in the Caribbean.
Oh, absolutely. And that's something I've always found is a fascinating use case is, being able to set up these decentralized identities for folks that have lacked access to those documents or those, key things that they need to get credit or access to a bank account or to get a loan or, to get recognition by the government, whatever it is. So that's such an interesting use case. And I've always been very interested in following some projects that are using blockchain and NFTs to bring about a decentralized identification system. So that's really fascinating. Love what you mentioned too about it, creates new mechanisms that just didn't exist before. What are some of these mechanisms that you see it creating and providing for folks that weren't available before, especially when it comes to folks maybe in developing or emerging economies?
Yes, I mean, I'm sure most people know different, areas of the world that are less developed by virtue of a whole slew of historical reasons, have a lot of issues to do with access to, like you just mentioned, bank accounts, payment processing, the whole slew of business registration. I deal with also another part of my work is MSME mechanism for support of basically small and micro entrepreneurs. We have a platform called Nudge Caribbean that supports these micro entrepreneurs, and you see every day how much struggle there is to just operate a business. And I do think that the blockchain is going to begin to assist with access to funding, access to payment processing, the whole slew of things that in a decentralized way, there are fewer barriers. Of course, this is, maybe not right away, but I definitely think that the developing world is, number one, in need of this sort of disruption, but also a source of the innovation, because we are the ones dealing with these issues on a daily basis. And the ideas and the innovation that we have already to solve for these problems, I think could be easily sourced in this, particularly in the Caribbean. Obviously, this is where I'm from, but I think the spectrum of the developing world is a great source for that innovation.
Absolutely. And I think that, one thing I love about what you're doing and many in the space are doing is, really making sure that Web3, NFTs, blockchain is something that is really benefiting everyone, folks from developing countries, emerging economies, as opposed to just being something that, further exacerbates inequities that exist and just really only benefits those that, are well off or from developed countries. So I think that that's a great point. And that's one of the most exciting use cases I see of blockchain and NFTs is just, providing new opportunities from those that lacked those opportunities previously, whether that's to get banked, to have access to the world of, to share their arts and to get fair value for their art they create and being able to sell it versus NFT as opposed to having to go through, prohibitive professional arts institutions or something like that. So I think that there's just amazing potential there. And that's one of the things that I'm most really excited about to see how blockchain addresses these inequities and levels the playing field. So that's really exciting. So Anya, I really appreciate all you've shared so far. And thank you for all the great work that you're doing with Wildflower, with Spool. Do you have any other thoughts on the future of NFTs for social impact or anything else you want to share with the audience today?
Well, first of all, thank you again so much for having me. It's really an honor. It's an honor to be in this category of, change makers. As I was saying to you when we spoke about this before, it's really incredible to be doing the work that we've done for so long. And I think David refers to it at times a bit lonely, and to now be doing it together and to have much more of a community around the sort of social change we all seek, and have a technology that actually affords us to do this work in a way that is scalable, that is, as you just mentioned, democratized. And I just hope that all that we wish for it to become is actually what it turns out to be. Because of course there's always that gap, but I think, it's limitless as far as I can tell. I really think that the blockchain is designed to facilitate so much of this, authentically driven, mission focused work that so many of us as artists, as technologists, the whole spectrum of people have wanted to see for so long. And really, we just have to kind of take the reins, as ChangeDAO is, and put social change at the forefront and ensure that that's the real driving force of the work we're doing.
That is a great, powerful point to end on there. We need to take the reins and make sure that we're putting social impact at the forefront of the work that we're doing. So that is amazing. I absolutely love that. Thank you again, Anya, for everything that you've shared today. It's been a pleasure hearing from you. If you're in the spatial space, and that's Change.Gallery in your browser or mobile app, make sure to check out Anya's board, where you can learn a little bit more about her work, and yeah, make sure to follow her on Twitter as well. So thank you so much, Anya. Pleasure again. Any final words for today?
Not at all. Just thank you again for having me, and hope to host people in Trinidad in real life sometime soon. Thanks so much for having me here today.
Awesome. Thank you, Anya. So I'm getting some reports that there are some mics cutting in and out, so I do apologize for the audio issues. Going to try to work on that on my end so that the audio is nice and clean. So thanks for your patience with that. So again, a big thank you to Anya. Really powerful story there. Check out Anya's board in our Change Gallery. And yeah, so we have a couple minutes before we invite up our next speaker, Zach. So I might actually just put someone else on the spot here. So let's pull in Brian here. Brian, I want to ask you a question. So you've been involved in this space for quite a while in many different ways. Would love to hear your thoughts on the most inspiring thing that you've encountered when it comes to your experience in Web3 and NFTs. What's been the most inspiring experience or event you've attended or something you've seen happening in the space?
Hey, that's a good question. I know this is kind of a cheat of an answer, but when we did a ChangeDAO meetup at NFT NYC before myself, Coldy, and Imani spoke about our experiences, we opened it up to the floor and we just passed around a microphone and listened to everybody else's experiences, and that like floored me because one, I feel like a lot of people in this space are kind of shy, but I got to listen to dozens of people tell very amazing stories, and it the relationships that were formed that day are still thriving today. And so I know that's kind of a cheat answer, but I think that that really solidified that what we were starting to build with this project was going to resonate with people.
No, that's not a cheat answer at all. I think that's fantastic. And to me, there's nothing more powerful than bringing a group of people together, hearing their stories, and finding those commonalities. So that's great. And yeah, I think that that's something that I definitely am excited to be more a part of in the future, is taking more part in these events and these in-person things as well. And I know that ChangeDAO is going to be attending some of the ones coming up, which is exciting as well. But thank you so much, Brian. Appreciate you sharing your thoughts there. I see that Kelsey, do you have something you want to share?
Yeah, I just wanted to hop in and reiterate, we're getting a lot of speaking requests from audience members. And while we do appreciate your engagement with the community, right now we're really highlighting our change makers. So that is the reason I am not asking people to come up and speak yet. That may change as the event goes on, and we'll open it up. And at that time, when we request, you can send in requests to speak. But I'm not ignoring you. We're not ignoring you. We just want to stick to our schedule and make sure that each of our 7 change makers has the time to tell their story. So that was all. Also, Neckbeard's about to come up and talk a little bit about the actual spatial space. I encourage you to all jump in if you haven't already. And a lot of our change makers on their boards have QR codes. I also encourage you to check out their QR codes, their link trees, their work. Yeah, and I'll pass it over to you, Drew, to introduce Zach now.
Great. Thank you, Kelsey. Very much appreciated. And before we get into our conversation with Zach, aka Neckbeard, make sure to also retweet this if you would be so kind. We are a grassroots movement at ChangeDAO, and we really rely on word of mouth. And so if you could hit that tweet button if you're new to the room, share this with your followers so we can get as many people in on this conversation as possible. So thank you, Kelsey, for sharing those thoughts there and those important housekeeping items. Okay, so next up, I am so excited to welcome Zach, aka Neckbeard. Zach has been huge when it comes to the event's build, making sure that the spatial looks amazing, that everything went off seamlessly. So Zach, tell us a little bit about yourself, maybe how you came to be involved with ChangeDAO and your experience in the Web3 space.
Yeah, so my first kind of introduction into ChangeDAO was, like Brian said, at NFT NYC. it really was one of my favorite events of that whole entire weekend, just because of kind of how I've always felt about cryptocurrency since I started joining in the cryptocurrency craze back in 2017. I've always seen it as a way to empower people that haven't been empowered, kind of redistribute some of the imbalances in the world. And so, once the NFT craze kind of started kicking up, there was a lot of talks about projects that are going absolutely crazy and moon conversations. And so to kind of go to that breakfast meeting and see some of the people in the space that are really trying to leverage this new technology in the ways that I've always hoped that this technology would be used for was super invigorating to me. I went with, I co-founded I'm Not Art. We're a Chicago gallery, NFT gallery in the city of Chicago. And we started off in the metaverse. So once I kind of caught wind of the 7 stories of change, and David asked me if I could lend any hands, I jumped at that because I think what ChangeDAO is doing and what the change makers are contributing is so important to keeping this space a balance between, making cool art, making money, but also making social change. And so any way I could help and continue to help, it's a super big honor to be even included and asked for help. But yeah, that's a little bit about me. I'm the director of Metaverse Experience. So primarily building in crypto voxels, which, I had seen Brian in crypto voxels just as a neighbor and walking past. And so to be able to work with Brian and work with some of the change makers, it was an honor.
That's great. Well, thank you, Zach. I really appreciate you sharing that. And just for those that just so you're all aware in the back channel, Zach says he's going to keep it nice and short, but I'm not going to let Zach get off that easy. So curious to hear more about I'm Not Art, Zach, if you don't mind sharing. I'm always really fascinated with collectives, organizations, or projects that are really bridging that gap between metaverse and real life. Tell me about I'm Not Art.
Yeah, so we originally started back in 2021 as a metaverse gallery, and our kind of core concept was we saw that the metaverse prices and of parcels were starting to get a little out of hand for accessibility for your average person, and so we tried to leverage our parcels to give an audience to people that might not otherwise be able to have a metaverse presence, and that slowly evolved into opening up a physical brick and mortar in Chicago for the simple reason of kind of taking this experience and bringing it, traditionally a physical experience that we started off in the metaverse as, and bringing it full circle back to the physical experience. And what we saw happen when we did that was this amazing community starting to sprout up in Chicago. That's where we're from. New York City and LA, and Miami, there's a lot of hotspots for cryptocurrency. And we figured, why can't Chicago be a part of those hotspots as well? And some of the community that we have building in Chicago, it's been super invigorating to be able to have a place to educate people. We feel education is super important in this space, and community building, and kind of getting back to some face-to-face community building, giving an ability for NFT artists that might not have seen their work on walls, a wall to see their work on, both in the metaverse and in the real world. So that's kind of what we're all about, and how we started, and hoping to continue growing our relationship with ChangeDAO and supporting greater movements.
That's great. I love that. Well, thank you for sharing that, Zach. And I'm going to ask you one more question, if you don't mind. You'd mentioned earlier on, and I agree with this wholeheartedly, that you very much see crypto and NFTs as a way to empower people that haven't been empowered traditionally, that have lacked that access that others in maybe more positions of privilege have had. Tell me about some of the ways that you see crypto and NFT really empowering folks that haven't had that empowerment traditionally.
Well, just in seeing it firsthand, we've had artists that have had exhibitions where, to see that money go directly to an artist, and these artists that have greater aspirations of making changes in their local neighborhoods. We just had a exhibition with Goldie NFT, and to kind of see firsthand this ability of NFTs to support an artist with a greater vision. It's proof positive that this concept does work. That, you know, traditionally he might have had to post his work to Reddit or Instagram or something like that, where the end product is maybe that someone reaches out to you and asks for a print or something like that. So to see this direct peer-to-peer style of distributing art and distributing messages, I think is extremely important and valuable. And then you kind of take that and you add layers like ChangeDAO, where you're leveraging art, like Aaron had mentioned. Art has always been a way of kind of creating revenue for projects and creating awareness. And so it's just a natural evolution of things. If you really think about it, we are becoming so attached digitally to our digital belongings and our digital identities that to bring it full circle and create a marketplace, to create an economy and a way of peer-to-peer transacting of money for goods, it's extremely important. And it's just a natural cycle, if you ask me, going from, you know, seashells to cryptocurrency. It just, that's how it always was going to be.
Wow, yeah, those are some great words there. Love everything you said there. Thank you so much, Zach. Sorry for putting you on the spot, but I appreciate all the insight that you've brought into this conversation, and I might pull you back up later on. From seashells to cryptocurrency. I'm going to write that down somewhere and keep that as a quote. So appreciate it again, Zach. Any final words, anything else you want to share before we move on to our next speaker?
No, I'll kick it to another change maker, but I just really appreciate you guys giving me an opportunity to speak and letting me be involved with the 7 Stories of Change.
Yeah, no, it's a pleasure having you here. Thanks, Zach. Great. Okay, so before we move on to our next change maker, who is Soul Monster, and I'm really excited about this conversation and to learn more about Soul Monster's fantastic work that she's doing to really drive human rights activism and action in Belarus. Wanted to remind it and thank everyone new who just joined in. We got some great projects, and I'm recognizing a few individuals in here. For those that just joined in, please do us a favor and retweet this space so we can make sure that we're getting the word out to as many people as possible. Another pitch as well for the spatial space. To access it, simply in your browser, on your mobile browser, type in change.gallery, and it'll bring you to that space. You don't have to set up an account. You can join as a guest, and that's a great way to fully engage with this experience. You can check out the boards that our change makers have set up, see some of their art, hear their stories. Some of them also have QR codes to go to their websites or their social links or their link trees. So definitely make sure to hop in the spatial if you get a chance. It would be, yeah, we'd love to see you in there. Great. Okay, so next up, we're going to invite Soul Monster. I'm just waiting for Soul Monster to come on here so we can add her in as a speaker and bring her up on stage. Before we do that, Kelsey, why don't I'm going to ask you a question. I'm going to put you on the spot here.
Sure.
I know that.
I do have to say, Soul Monster just hopped on, but
perfect.
I'm happy to answer a question. Go ahead.
Great. So I'll ask you a quick question, then we'll turn it over to Soul Monster. So I know, Kelsey, since you joined the space and you're traditionally from the nonprofit sector, I believe. What brought you to this space? How did you get involved with Web3 and NFTs?
Yeah, absolutely. I kind of came into this space in a non-traditional way. I think a lot of people come through DeFi or come through art. I actually came into the space through nonprofit work. The nonprofit that I work with as a senior strategist now wanted to accept crypto donations. And so I started looking into the cryptocurrency world, the DeFi world, NFTs, and realized very quickly that cryptocurrency donations are really just the tip of the iceberg. And the more time I spent in the space, the more hooked I got, which I think everyone here can relate to the addictive quality that the NFT space has. But all of that to say, I've worked a lot in institutions and traditional markets where we have to prove that people are being left out, and then we have to fix them because they're broken. And Web3, in a way, the cement hasn't dried yet. And so it's a really hopeful place and a really exciting and fast-paced place to be right now, as we start to really build the foundation of Web3, and how we incorporate social impact intentionally into that building.
That's great. Well, thank you, Kelsey, and appreciate you giving us that insight as I put you on the spot there. And I heard something from you that I've heard from so many people. And as you know, I host a podcast, and the question I ask every guest at the beginning of the podcast is, what was your aha moment that got you interested in cryptocurrency, Web3, or NFTs? Undoubtedly, every single time, it's always, oh, it was this one little thing. And then I just fell down the rabbit hole, I became addicted, or just kept wanting to learn more because there was so much to learn, and it was so fascinating, and there was such an amazing community. So it's definitely a commonality that I'm sure many people in the room here have experienced as well. It's, you kind of get in with one little foot in the door, dip your toes in the water to learn a little bit about it, and then you just quickly fall down the rabbit hole and really become quite addicted to the space and learning as much as you can. So thank you so much for sharing that, Kelsey. And I'm going to actually hand it off to you now to introduce our next change maker, who is Soul Monster.
Yes, thank you for allowing me to introduce Soul Monster. We met Soul Monster through the 7 Stories contest. That's how she came into the ChangeDAO world. But since then, she's really stepped up as a contributor. She was instrumental in building out this event and this space, just coordinating with her fellow change makers as well as our technical team. She is located in Belarus. She is 9 hours ahead of me in Austin, Texas, and often will stay up until odd hours to meet with us and make things happen. And so without further ado, I want to give her the stage. But once again, thank you so much, Soul Monster, for everything that you have contributed to ChangeDAO thus far.
Thank you. Thank you so much for the introduction, Kelsey. Hi, everyone. My name is Soul Monster, she, her, hers.
Great. Thank you for the introduction, Kelsey. Thank you, Soul Monster, for being here. Want to echo what Kelsey said. I always appreciate that, despite being in Belarus with a very different time zone, you're always there. You're always energetic and positive and willing to contribute and help out in whatever way you can. And you've been a huge part of the spatial as well, and making sure that everything looks amazing, getting all the word clouds and the boards up and looking good. So thank you for everything you've done. So Soul Monster, I have a little intro blurb here I'm going to read from you, and I'm going to hand it off for the questions. So you're a designer for human rights initiatives and a design researcher for interplanetary futures, which sounds fascinating, and I'm really excited to learn more about that as well. So you mentioned in your intro blurb that since yet another rigged election in Belarus, that your designs have contributed to human rights initiatives, including the Office of Sviatlana, and I'm going to not pronounce the last name because I'm sure I won't pronounce it right, but maybe you can when you come up here, the democratic leader of the country. You create posters, flyers, stickers, videos depicting personal stories, infographics, statistics, and how-tos essential in times of crisis. You value sustainability and justice, and you believe that the only constant thing is change. So thank you so much for joining today, Soul Monster. It's a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you so much. It's my pleasure to tell my story. And so the name of the person that I've been working with is Svetlana Tikhanovskaya.
Great. Well, thank you for saying that, because I definitely would not have pronounced that properly. So I really appreciate that. So to start things off, let's get a little bit of context about the situation in Belarus and that you've been fighting for justice within. So tell us a little bit about the situation in Belarus and how you're fighting for justice and contributing to democratic endeavors.
Yes, wonderful. And I also forgot to check in. Can everybody hear me well? Can you, I don't know, put an emoji?
Yep, you're coming through well.
Good. Wonderful. Great. All right. Yeah, so as to your question, well, I'll probably start from a very far. So Belarus, it's a country of 10 million people. Geographically, it's a very center of Europe between Ukraine and Russia. That has probably been on everybody's radar recently. So 1990s, Soviet Union falls apart, and the first president of the sovereign country is Alexander Lukashenko. Then the second president is Alexander Lukashenko. Third president is Alexander Lukashenko. And then the next 3 presidents are also surprise Alexander Lukashenko. So for almost 28 years, the same person gets to choose the present and the past and the future of the country. And literally anybody who's ever willing to stand up against him ends up in jail. And his actions get way more obvious and more ridiculous and more violent with every election. So in 2020, as practically all of his opponents ended up in jail, even before the elections began, the wife of one of the candidates chooses to run for the presidency in place of her jailed husband. And her name, like I said earlier, is Svetlana Tikhanovskaya. And turns out the majority votes for her. But the president obviously refuses to accept it and fakes all the numbers. And so what follows is a huge wave of violence toward anybody who chooses to speak up. So peaceful protesters, including myself, end up in jails. A lot of us humiliated, a lot of us beaten, and detentions come in waves. Even now, to this day, like almost 2 years later, people are taken from their homes straight to so-called questioning, sometimes by KGB, and then they're sent straight to jail, where most of them face from months to decades, to years to decades in prison. And so for me, for the past 2 years, my personal tool of resistance has been designed. So I've created close to 100, maybe 120 posters, flyers, guides, and informed people on how to act in certain situations. So I've worked with like legal, political, financial, mental health specialists to translate their advice and the information that they have that's super important into easy to grasp messages. So 100% of my work, very unfortunately, has to stay anonymous because, in terms of the authorship, because the organizations that I work with are deemed illegal or even extremist, even though they promote democracy and peace. So that's pretty unfortunate. And I can talk a little bit more about the power of design, but if you have any other questions or clarifications, let me know.
Yeah, well, let's jump into that then. Yeah, and I think it's so powerful what you're doing, and kudos to you because that must not be easy, the work that you're doing, but it's so vitally important. So thank you for what you're doing. I can't say that enough. But yeah, tell me about the role of design and art and crypto and Belarusian activism, and why design is the tool of choice for your efforts.
Well, to be honest, I think the simplest answer is because this is what, in terms of design, like I was just compelled to do design. I didn't do it in college, but I kind of felt like this is something I can do and I can contribute with. But in terms of the power of graphic design and information design, I think it's just a fast and effective way to transmit an important message. So for example, when you're bombarded with violence and fear and persecution, and some of your family members or friends are either in jail or facing years in prison, it's very important to grasp at least like something before you end up in that very critical and like high risk situation. So, for example, how to protest peacefully, what your legal rights are, how to communicate with government officials, how to find a communication channel with your family members, like how to secure financial savings, and so on and so forth. So, the better design the poster, the better the design of the poster, then the more chances you have to sort of be informed and act in the right way. But of course, the impact of design, in my opinion, extends from just the physical world to how we understand the society and just ideas that we identify with. So I think I've been creating postcards, stickers, and just like small uplifting graphics that also motivate and inspire folks to move forward, no matter what. And in terms of maybe to bridge with the crypto topic, the benefits of using crypto start with storing money outside of a central bank, which can the central bank can always freeze your account, and it has done it to me multiple times. But thankfully, a lot of my money is in crypto, especially once I started doing NFTs. So that's really amazing. And receiving help has become much safer with crypto. For instance, I could easily transfer money from an NFT sale that I made to a human rights organizations that help families of political prisoners. And actually, with the NFT that I sold for, again, for that crypto, then that I transferred is in the spatial, so you can check that out.
That's great. Thank you, Solmonsa. Definitely do check that out. Solmonsa did a great job putting together the board highlighting her work and her art. So Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. So tell me about some of your upcoming initiatives that you have going on.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think the biggest one is the one that I put on my board, and the goal of that initiative is to help political prisoners get back on their feet upon the release. Currently, there are about or over 1,000 people that are serving years to decades in prison. There is obviously a lot of hard and paid labor, no healthcare, almost no communication with the outer world. I have a lot of friends, family, like extended family members and friends of family, a lot of people that I know that are very young people who are going to be serving at least 5 years in prison. So that's absolutely ridiculous. But to be realistic, the lengths of prison sentences is just not under my control at this point. But what happens after partially is. So, like I said, my goal of the initiative that I'm starting this year is to help political prisoners get back on their feet. And that would include assistance with physical relocation, healthcare costs, education, employment, hopefully in Web3. So, that is the goal. I haven't really made a lot of progress yet because it's kind of at this point the first step is getting all the information I need, making sure that the project that I set up is actually going to work long term, and maybe most importantly right now is also relocating from Belarus. I thought even a couple of weeks ago that I would be relocating to Kiev, Ukraine, because it used to be way safer in there, but now since that is not an option, we'll figure out what's going to be next for me. So first step is to gather all the information, hopefully move out of the country as soon as possible, and then being able to be open and transparent about that initiative of helping political prisoners.
Yeah, that's such an important initiative that you're taking on and that you're really leading here. Um, Something you said to me really spoke with me. That a lot of people that you know, and including some really young people, are going to be spending 5 years in prison. 5 years minimum, probably more, in very difficult conditions. And um, I'm just so amazed with your courage and in this fight. And so I'm going to go a little bit off script here. I hope that's okay. Hope you don't mind, because we have a couple of minutes. How do you stay strong and stay, on mission and hopeful in this fight, with all this, really terrible stuff going on around you, and seeing, those that you love end up in really difficult situations? How do you stay strong and hopeful?
That's a good question, and I don't think I have a good answer to it. It's definitely very easy to become discouraged, but every single day when I either wake up or every single night, or not really a night, I mean, there's no time zone for me anymore, but like every time I go to bed, I always end up thinking that, like I go to sleep in my own bed, in my own apartment. I'm safe, well, at least for this day. So I'm always thankful for not being in those terrible conditions that a lot of my peers have to go through for the next, like you said, 5 years at least. And to me, I think what keeps me going is that there are still people that are physically, they're not in jail, they're free, and we are those people who are able to make things better for those that are serving those years. So for me, I think the most important aspect and the most important message I keep telling myself is that you're here, and if you're free, you have the hands, the expertise, hopefully the money very soon, and you have the plan to help those people. So why not do it? Because at this point, if what I end up doing is just either staying at bed and thinking about how bad the situation is, then it's not helping anybody. So I really try to be realistic and logical about if I really want to make things better, then I should be taking steps to do it. And if I, for example, like if somebody comes for me tomorrow, at least I've tried doing something. Because for me, what matters is, and I feel like if I was in that situation, being in jail right now, what I would love for my friends to do is to actually be taking steps rather than just sitting and thinking about how bad it is for me being in there. So I guess it's more about just knowing what the possibilities are and knowing that I can do it. And there's a huge world of people who are not indifferent and who are going to step up and also help me out in this endeavor.
Wow, what a powerful statement there. And I wrote down something here. I've already gotten in my notebook in front of me several quotes that I'm going to have to keep looking back on from this event to, remind me of these powerful conversations. You said, that you're here, and if you're free, you have the ability to help people, so why not do it? And that's such a powerful statement. And I'm just amazed with the courage and what you're doing to really fight for human rights and for justice in Belarus. So, obviously this is a very complex topic, and there's also, lots of ways for folks to engage with the work that you're doing. So what's the best way for the audience to learn more, to get involved, to connect with you?
I think right now the best way would be, because I'm so early in terms of that initiative, is to literally just DM me and talk to me, and I would be happy to dedicate some time, maybe even hopefully to do some spaces and just talk to people and invite folks to the stage and discuss ideas. But if you're for example, an educator in Web3, and what are the best practices, and how to onboard folks into new tech spaces, especially, if you have any experience of onboarding folks who, not that they served years in prison, but sort of like folks who are not in tech at all, or who are not equipped with that, they're not super tech savvy. If you have that experience, and need tips and tricks of how to onboard folks, that would be great. Or if you're, say, a human rights activist, and or you have any ideas on how to best plan a rehabilitation or relocation program for political prisoners, please reach out to me via DMs. I'd honestly be happy to get as much expertise, as many opinions, and as much advice to make it a truly impactful endeavor. So my DMs are always open. Please reach out, and I would be absolutely happy to talk to you and explain stuff, or have you explain stuff to me, because there's so much that I have yet to learn in order to make it successful.
Well, that's great. That's a good call to action there as well. Definitely reach out to Sol Monsta. Our DMs are open to learn about how you can, work together on this really important issue. And so, thank you so much, Sol Monster, for everything you've shared. Really, again, I'm amazed by the fantastic and important work that you're doing, and can't wait to see how it continues to evolve in the coming days, weeks, months, and years. So, thank you, Sol Monster. Anything final you want to share before we wrap up this conversation?
I just want to say thank you to you, Drew, and to the entire ChangeDAO team, and to all the change makers, because I think also one of the reasons of why I became so firm about, dedicating my time toward this initiative that hopefully will thrive this year is because of ChangeDAO and because of the ChangeDAO contest. I was like, all right, cool. Now I'm seeing that somebody wants to hear my message, so I'm here to tell the story and to actually be upfront and open about the change that I want to do. So to everybody who's putting time and effort and ideas in your mind and soul and heart to this initiative, a huge, huge thank you. And I'm super grateful to be part of the team and to be contributing, and really looking forward to see how the platform turns out, and how this, how the DAO just grows and becomes better and better.
Yo, Sol Monte, hey, this is David. I just want to sort of take a moment and uplift, not only your story, but for what your story has done for me personally. And I know on the core team, when we were going through all of the videos, your story really helped us understand why courage is one of our core qualities. And, when we look at, a lot of the recent stories, whether it's the truckers in Canada, or these centralized banking institutions or clearinghouses, or some of the crypto philanthropy sites that are kind of set up that way as well. Like, for us, your story really underscores that this could never happen before Ethereum, right? And it's why decentralization matters so much to us, and why we are doing everything we can to ensure that smart contracts are permanent and immutable on the blockchain. And yes, we're being very careful and considered about how we get this thing started and about who ultimately is able to create those smart contracts. But it's just so absolutely vital that folks understand the core difference between a true Web3 platform based on decentralization and a lot of other things that are out there, whether Web2 or some other things that aren't so Web3, that are just acting like a Web2 and may have a little bit of the special sauce mixed into it. But for us, you've helped us really think a lot about our design choices. And can you think of a greater gift to give to something like ChangeDAO, which has a 10,000 year goal, a long-term vision to make this available for folks like you? And in my own personal story, I just want to relate, that I've always, I spent 20 years in politics, speech writing in the U.S. Senate, all this stuff, but the idea of freedom fighting is real and it's in our world today and it's necessary. And before this global community, I feel like your story would not have had an audience or a place where folks could hear about this and get involved. And for so long, change has been so immediate, right? It's at the checkout stand. People ask if you want to give a tip or whatever to a charity, and you're like, yeah, which one? What does it do? And then you just kind of move on. And that transactional approach to change is, has a place, but ChangeDAO is different. And you allow us to interrogate and explore who we are as humans and to explore what it means to be together in this moment as human beings. And we may not all agree with the types of change. I mean, it's not even for ChangeDAO to take a stand or to say what change is good or morally important or any of these things, but just to support you and to shoulder up with you and to know that you're one of our 7 stories. I just want to applaud you. You're so courageous and you put so much work into this space. And, from the bottom of my heart and on behalf of this whole team, thank you so much.
Thank you so much, David, for these really kind words. And I'm super happy that, my story and I am sort of making the better, making the design decisions that are made by ChangeDAO a little bit better. And like you said, that, that initiative is very long term. And hopefully what we start with, all these 7 stories, are actually setting up a very good foundation for what's coming next. But thank you so much. Really, it really warms my heart.
Great. Well, I just want to apologize, everyone. Sorry, I got my app crashed there, so I got disconnected for a bit. So thank you, David, for jumping in and helping out there and picking that up. And Soul Monster, thank you again. Such an inspiring conversation. Again, I'm so amazed with how courageous you are and with the fantastic work you're doing. Can't wait to see what you do with it. So that's great. So thank you, Soul Monster. We have a couple minutes now before we have our next change maker come up, who is the wonderful Dylan Weinstein, who's going to be speaking about his fascinating work that he's doing. And it's called, oh, I lost it on here. I'll find it a bit later, but he's really looking at, his art encompasses themes and histories of queerness and using everyday objects such as childhood toys to bring deeper meaning to simple objects. And so I'm really excited to bring him up in a bit. But before we do that, we're just going to reset the room here a little bit. We're just about at the halfway point. It's been an amazing conversation so far, and I want to thank our change makers so far that have come up on finger quotes stage, including Soul Monster, of course, Anya and Aaron. And for those who haven't yet had a chance, definitely hop in the gallery. You don't have to stay for the whole time. Just pop in, check out the boards, see the amazing work that the artists put into making those happen. Check out the QR codes to link to their link trees, their websites, their work. It's a great way to support them and to learn more about their stories and the great work they're doing and to see the amazing work that the team behind this put into it. So definitely hop in to get there, change.gallery in your browser, and it'll bring you right there. And you don't need to set up an account or anything, so that's great. Another reminder as well for the pull-up we have, so to gain access to that, and again, we'll announce this a couple more times throughout, If you do have the mobile app, tap on secret keyword and enter, and here in quotes, ChangeDAO 7 stories is the code there, or email us a screenshot from your phone of the metaverse right now to hello@changedao.org, and we'll make sure that it gets to you. So just make sure to do that as well. So for those, just another housekeeping items, for those that are joining the spatial, we recommend that you then mute the tab for the spatial so that you're not getting double the audio. So yeah, great. So before we, our next speaker, we do have a bit of time here. So yeah, let's maybe bring up, who are we gonna bring up here? Diego, do you have a second you wanna come up? I'm gonna ask you, put you on the spot here and ask you a couple questions.
Yeah, for sure. How's it going?
All right, great. And thank you for all you've done so far in making this experience a reality, and coordinating things between the spatial and the Twitter makes my job a lot easier. So thank you for that. So tell me a little bit about how you got into the NFT and Web3 space.
Oh man, so this journey has been quite a bit of a long one for me. So I found out about cryptocurrencies back when like 2010, back when I used to play RuneScape. So a lot of people that would play the game would sell their gold for Bitcoin. And back then I was like, oh man, that's just ridiculous, you know? And ever since then, it's been in the back of my mind. Fast forward a couple of years to 2020, the pandemic hits, and I got myself a VR headset because I thought to myself, well, if I'm going to be inside of a room, might as well make the four walls be whatever I'd like them to be, right? And ever since then, it's just been a matter of like, you know, socializing, creating, and around November of last year, I found out that, you know, NFTs could be more than just pixelated images and just kind of like be anything you really want, from a video to a 3D model. And that's where it kind of all got started for me. So I started 3D rendering on Blender and Gravity Sketch inside of my VR headset, and just kind of been putting stuff up, sharing. More than anything, I really like the community aspect and being able to like meet others, get different perspectives, because artistically speaking, like, art isn't just what you create, but also the words that you have and the experiences that you share with one another. And something that I highly value is being able to hear different perspectives that I can then learn from, and then use that perspective in my own personal growth and adventure in this human experience called my life.
Wow, that is you're very well spoken. And you mentioned art isn't just what you create, but how but the experiences that you share and that you use to bring people together. My quote list is just getting longer and longer from today, so that's great. So thank you for sharing that, Diego. So how do you see NFTs, Web3, the metaverse, creating these new experiences to really elevate stories? How do you see that happening? What are some of the use cases you see that we can use the metaverse, Web3, NFTs to really bring new experiences to art that we haven't been able to before? And I know that's a bit of a tough question and kind of oddly worded, so sorry for putting you on the spot there.
Oh no, like that's actually a really good question, and I'm glad that you asked it, because something that comes to mind a lot to me when it comes to like metaverse and NFTs and just, you know, the internet and the broad spectrum of things is how it's allowed us to stay more connected with one another. Where, you know, back in, you know, not even 50 years ago, people weren't as connected as they are now. And I really like the idea of the metaverse and kind of going into virtual worlds, being able to be anything you feel comfortable being, since something that I kind of think about is how, you know, we didn't really ask to be born, what kind of circumstances to be born in, you know, what race, gender, cultural background. However, when you step into a virtual world, you can pretty much shed all of that and represent yourself how you, in whatever way that you see truest to yourself and who you are as an individual. So something that I've heard from other people in the space as well is that we go from, you know, body to body communication to mind communication through these devices, right? Where it's not just a matter of, you know, how we look, kind of giving out much more louder than our physical form, which we can kind of take advantage inside of the metaverse.
That's great. Well, thank you so much for sharing that. And it's clear that you have you put a lot of thought into this. And I've learned so much from you just in the short time that we've had this conversation. So I appreciate you coming up and sharing your thoughts. And thank you again for all you've done to make the spatial experience a reality and for helping bridge the gap between the Twitter space and spatial as well. So thanks you again, Diego. I appreciate you being here.
Of course, it's my pleasure. And again, thank you so much for the opportunity. When David first came to me with this opportunity, it was more of like, hey, you know, we just want to put a platform on for people to share their stories and kind of exemplify as to how they can have change throughout the world, and kind of using the internet to keep each other connected and share those stories, and any new mediums that become available that allow us to do so, I always think are good to take advantage of as well.
Absolutely, for sure. Well, thank you again, Diego. Really appreciate it. Great. So moving along, next I'm just going to call Brian. I see that Brian is just set to listener, so we're going to leave Brian for now. And so just going to do a couple quick reminders before as we get closer to the time of our next changemaker, Dylan. So for those that are new here and want to learn more about how this, oh, there we go. I see Brian just sent a request, so I'm just going to give him access there, and then we'll come to him in a second. Check out ChangeDAO.org. Go to the docs page if you want to learn a little bit more about the history behind how the 7 Stories contest came together, how ChangeDAO found these amazing change makers as the first 7 change makers to onboard onto the platform. So that's ChangeDAO.org is the best place to go. Go to the docs. You can learn about the history behind it, the work at NFT NYC, and how they really brought the community together to define these 7 areas of social change. And everything about ChangeDAO has truly been grassroots and community driven, which was one of the reasons why I was really excited to get involved with ChangeDAO as well, because I think it's just so amazing how they're bringing the community together and making sure the community is really a part of every decision and really driving the vision behind it. So that's great. So I see that Brian is a speaker now. Kelsey, you just turned your mic on. Did you want to share something first?
Yeah, just more housekeeping stuff for those who have just joined. You can find the POAP badge in the space if you are in Spatial. There's also a word cloud that reflects the work that we did during the design thinking session at our NFT NYC event. There are also QR codes in all of these boards, so you can check out our change makers. Another thing, we have pinned tweets at the top of this space. The pinned tweets, if you go through them, also give a detailed, it's a detailed thread on each of our change makers. And so you can visit their Twitter spaces and their link trees, as well as ChangeDAO. And one more thing about the ChangeDAO website, yes, you can go in and look at the docs, and we welcome you to do that to kind of see our vision and how we're bringing that to life. There are also a couple ways to get involved. You can get email updates, which you'll get from our team as kind of a newsletter. And then you can also submit an interest form. So anyone who wants to be a change maker, anyone who wants to be a contributor in some capacity to the team, please feel free to jump in there, send us an interest form, and we'll be sure to communicate with accordingly. So yeah, that was all for me. We can pass it over to Brian now. I just wanted to make sure that everyone that just joined this space kind of gets their bearings.
Great, thank you, Kelsey. Very much appreciated. Great, so Brian, welcome back again. So Brian is the spokes artist for ChangeDAO, and really excited to pick your brain some more here, Brian, as we wait for our next speaker to begin that. So I know that you've worked in a number of different spaces. You've also worked for SNL, which I found fascinating. I just learned that about you the other day, which was really cool. So what about the Web3 space drew you in and made you decide that that's where you want to be?
Yeah, so like you said, I kind of spent the last 15 years working in various, television or commercial or pretty much any industry that would hire an artist. And what appealed to me about the Web3 space was that I'd spent all that time trying to find ways of turning my digital art into something I could create value with. And for the most part, an artist has to just make that work for free and post it on sites like Tumblr or Instagram and hope someone in power sees it and will hire you to make a commercial or something. When I discovered the NFT space a little over 2 years ago, it immediately connected with me because, one, I no longer had to think about a physical aspect to my work and how it should look as a still image. I could actually create with motion, and also the connections you have between the artist and the collector are so much stronger in this space that you immediately get hooked in because you're it's not just a transaction, it's a relationship that lasts, as long as each side wants to be a part of it. And so that immediately kind of showed me the potential of the community that could be built around this space. And then as time went on, I started to see more and more about how that community could be utilized, whether it's with DAOs trying to raise funds for something or with raising money for charities. This connection we have with each other is value that can be used for a lot of different ways and a lot of good.
Yeah, totally. And I would view you as someone that I would call a seasoned veteran in the NFT space, if you will. I'm sure there are some folks that are in this chat right now that are maybe newer to the space. If you could give any pieces of advice to those in terms of how to best, really make the most out of Web3 and the NFT community and to get as engaged as possible, what would that be?
Yeah, I think getting, like you said, get engaged. Join these Twitter spaces, which if you're in here, you're already doing a great job of it. Join Discords, follow artists, retweet artists, connect with artists. The artist community in the space is extremely strong and friendly and helping to each other. And so if you're new in the space, I mean, I think art is just one aspect of the space. It's a lot of marketing and it's a lot of connections and a lot of community, and having meaningful relationships with each other is crucial to building trust so that you can grow in this space. And so, yeah, I think it's a lot of, just you don't have to jump in and try and sell art right away. You can jump in and just kind of hang out and enjoy the space and learn from it for a while before you try to monetize.
Yeah, that's a great point. Well, I thank you again, Brian, for coming up, and I appreciate you letting me put you on the spot. I'm always really enjoy our conversations and hearing about all the amazing insight that you have to provide to the conversation. So thank you. So before we hop on to our next changemaker, which is Dylan, I'm going to invite David up again just to share a couple thoughts here. And there was a bit of a segue there from Brian. He mentioned that you need to really, in the space, build relationships, build trust. And trust is one of the core values of ChangeDAO. David, do you mind telling the audience here a bit about the values behind ChangeDAO and the community-driven approach that ChangeDAO takes?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So, I think for ChangeDAO, it's always been about how do we create this canvas, right? How do we support an ecosystem that is going to thrive, and to do so in a way that is authentic and can be proven, through transparency and through its actions, really serving as a campfire for folks, but primarily so that they can take their own torch or their own candle and sort of light it and then go and start up their own bonfire, right? And kind of keep it going wherever they want to keep it going. And so that's why, like, for us to hear I'm Not Art, kind of what they're doing in Chicago, however we can support it. I mean, there's a very, very small community of projects that are even publicly doxxed, which we are, of course, let alone that are doing this, we think, for the right reasons. And yeah, so for us, we have 5 core values, trust being the first and the most essential. And so we think about things like, of course, being publicly transparent. One of my best early conversations was bringing Brian Brinkman on board, who already has so much trust with the community of change makers. And that's really a lot of why we focus so much on storytelling and just being out there in the field. We're going to be hosting another GM coffee at South by Southwest. Make sure you reach out to Kelsey if you're going to be there. We'd love for you to be a part of it. We're going to be doing it again at NFT NYC. I will be speaking at the event for like a little talk. But even if you're not attending NFT NYC, come to our GM coffee. We're super stoked to build on the success that we had. And then our other core values real quickly are, innovation, quality. So not only the quality of our code and how we've been making design choices that, not only think about gas, but from the point of view of how much energy we're using. So making sustainability decisions at the code level is actually probably the most important thing we can do as a DApp. Like the last thing you ever want to do is be on the top 10 list of gas hogs when it comes to Ethereum. And if you take a look at the code of those folks, you can probably start to, I mean, of course, volume has something to do with it, but this is really the opportunity for us to have an extraordinary quality code, the art, so creating a curatorial process. We look at projects like Super Rare and Art Blocks. We think they've done a really great job of putting the art first and helping the artist and, in our case, change makers as well, which is a broader category, really really thrive in that environment and really push themselves to create extraordinary high quality art that says something. The other core qualities are community. And so for us, I mean, ironically enough, we've closed down our Discord recently as we took a step back because we don't define quote, quote, community as Discord. We define it as a safe place where folks are able to listen, but also speak and be heard. And we're so good at doing that in public spaces, like at NFT NYC, when we went around the room and everyone had a chance to say what they wanted to, or just pass. That's cool too if people don't want to say something. But we feel like online, right? Things like Discord can really reward people that spend all of their time and attention in those spaces. And I can tell you, as a change maker, I spend most of my time working and building things, and I just don't have a ton of time to sit around and play engagements and stuff. So yeah, these are just some of the things that we're thinking about. Of how we do this stuff together with innovation. For us, it's also at the DAO level. So we created with our DAO a DAO pledge, which is a communication tool. So we're providing a way for folks to determine how we're a DAO and how we're not a DAO. Which is really important. It's a big gray area right now. There's no black and white. There's no playbook. There's a total lack of regulation in these spaces, when it comes to how you're forming your companies and what that looks like. So to be very clear and upfront and to create, we created a lot of transparency and trust in our in our DAO treasury. Because for us, change makers have access to that treasury to get ahead of social change, right? That's the power of a DAO. I mean, imagine, I'm sure a lot of change makers are on this call. Imagine having a DAO that, essentially you can write a grant request and have the DAO vote on a proposal so that, Fiona will share her story. She was talking about perhaps going to South America to be a photojournalist and really explore what's happening as Bitcoin is becoming one of the top currencies in the space. And so for us, it's not just about NFTs, like creating an artwork and selling it in a transaction. For us, it's actually getting in front of all of it in a lot of different ways. And we think our DAO treasury allows us to do that. So yeah, thanks a lot for letting me say hi. Be sure to jump into the space and grab the Pope. If you don't know what POAP is or Pope, it's a badge for 7 stories. It will be burned in a day, so get it now. You can email us at hello@changedao.org. Just take a screenshot and email it over to us with your Ethereum wallet address, and we'll send it to you. Or hop in the space. We just added a QR code. Or if you're familiar with the secret code on the app, it's just a little thing you can do. The secret code is ChangeDAO 7 stories. So thanks a lot, Drew. Back to you.
Awesome. Thanks, David. Really appreciate it. Some great words there. Good to hear that ChangeDAO will be taking part in some of the events coming up as well, South by Southwest, NFT NYC. So there'll be lots of opportunities to engage with the community around ChangeDAO. So thank you, David. Okay, so we are just about ready to hop into our next change maker. And then from here on out, we got actually quite a few 4 change makers in a row that we're just going to be doing some Q&A with. So I'm really excited to kind of move into the next and final phase of the event. Before we do that, I just want to say a big thank you to those that are requesting to participate. We are at this point really trying to focus on highlighting the change makers and their stories. So at this point, we're not inviting any audience members to speak. We may do that a bit later if we have some time at the end. We just want to make sure that we can really stick to the schedule and really give our change makers a chance to share their stories, because this is really about them and elevating them. But thank you. We do really appreciate all those folks that are looking to get involved and to ask questions and engage. So thank you. Okay, so we're going to move on to our next speaker, Dylan. As we do that, I'm just going to do one final request before we go into our final phase of the event with the next 4 change makers. If you don't mind hitting that tweet button, sharing this with your followers so we can get some more people here to hear these amazing stories from these extraordinary change makers. So thank you for those that have been sharing. Lots of good engagement on Twitter already. I really appreciate that. Okay, so we're going to jump into our final, or not our final, the final phase of the event with our next change maker, who is Dylan. So Dylan, are you there? Are you ready to go?
Yes, I'm here. Hello, how is everyone?
Great. Yeah, I'm great personally. And I think that those in the audience are as well from what I've seen in terms of the engagement on Twitter. So thank you so much for being here, Dylan. I'm going to read out a little bit of an introduction about you, and then give you a chance to introduce yourself as well. So Dylan Weinstein, whose pronouns are he, him, is a 20-year-old artist based in Los Angeles. His art encompasses themes and history of queerness, using everyday objects such as childhood toys to bring deeper meaning to simple objects, and working in the form of archive to take media from the past and use them in contemporary artistic ways. Sorry, one second. From sculpture to sorry, my apologies. From sculpture to painting, his art was revolutionized when introduced to the Web3 and NFT space. Activism plays an important role in his art, calling out and defining what needs to be changed in the world and bringing light to what issues need to be solved, specializing in gender and sexuality. As a student at the University of Southern California, pursuing his BFA in fine arts, taking queerness and making it come to life in the form of visual culture is his passion. So Dylan is our change maker for the change area of identity and vulnerable populations. So again, thank you so much for being here today, Dylan. It's a pleasure to have you.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here. I think that was an excellent introduction. I'm an artist, activist, and queer, and I'm here to make a change.
That's great. And so I'm really excited to learn about how you are making a change. So before we get there, tell me a little bit about how you got into art and later into the NFT space.
So I've really been making art my entire life, and I took a little hiatus, and then in high school, I kind of specialized in costume and set design, which really helped me build stories and get me to where I am today. And I didn't really become a quote unquote, capital A artist until about a year and a half ago, I'd say. And then about 6 months ago, I was introduced to the NFT space, and I was like so happy because it finally gave me a platform to share my art, but really my message, I think, is what I've taken away so much from the NFT space.
Yeah, absolutely. And I couldn't agree more with, not only a platform to share your art, but also a platform to share your message. And that's really what, ChangeDAO is about. And this experience today is about as well, as to provide a venue and a platform to really share these powerful stories and those messages. So I know a big part of your artwork is using, things like toys and army men. What inspired you to do this and to make use of these objects in your art?
Right. So as Drew said, army men are kind of like my signature of my art at this point in my life. And it came to be because I never actually played with the army men and toy soldiers as a kid. I was always one to play with Barbies and other female toys growing up queer. And so I wanted to point out the gender binaries that are associated with toys and other objects. And in my art, I strive to liberate the army men and other toys with color, because color has a very deep associated binary in that as well. And And for those who don't know, when I say binary, I'm talking about the delineation between what is male and what is female, and what society has set as a standard for both those two concrete aspects. And these binaries are constructed in life, and they affect so many people in so many ways, and especially they're ingrained in us as children in like our developmental stages, and it really impacts our youth and growing up after that.
Yeah, absolutely. That's great. And I've seen some of your art, and it's extremely powerful. And I absolutely love just the way that you use color and objects in different ways to really tell a story and a message. So for someone that's, viewing your art for the first time, what are you really hoping that they'll take away from that? And what are you hoping that they'll experience and the message that they'll receive from engaging with your art?
I think that the most important thing that I want people to do with my art is think about it. I think that thinking is one of the greatest powers we have, and it's the first step in education. And with thinking and education and knowledge, we gain so many valuable aspects. I think it's a launch pad for change, thinking is. And when you understand otherness and things that are new to you, you actually become more cultured and stronger in a way. And that is what leads you to make a difference. And I hope that with my art, one look at it can help make a single change. And that could be a small change. Just changing your mind really is a bigger change than a lot of people think.
Yeah, absolutely. And, small changes can make a big difference. And I can say from engaging with your art, it has really caused me to think about, it as well, and to really, and I've never been one to really ever been great at kind of engaging with art and really digging into the deeper meaning. But I've, really started to do that more. And by looking at your board and, seeing some of your art, it's clear that it's extremely powerful and telling a really important, story and message. So I know that your Outnumbered project is a big thing that you have on the horizon. Tell me about the Outnumbered project and what the goal is with that.
Right. So the Outnumbered project is kind of my culmination of knowledge and art and what I plan to share with the world. It's kind of like my life that I'm creating into an art series. And, we're starting with army men and different toys, but eventually I want to grow it to a large brand and global organization that gives back to queer youth. But right now we're just, hopefully starting with education and mental health for queer youth awareness. The Outnumbered project started a few months ago, and it's growing, and I hope to see it further along.
That's great. Thank you, Dylan. And so on your board on Spatial, and again, to access Spatial for those who haven't yet had a chance, Change.Gallery in your web browser or your mobile browser. Dylan did a fantastic job putting together his board on Spatial and displaying some of his art. For those who aren't able to check it out on Spatial, tell us a little bit about your board and the art being displayed and when they'll be minted.
So the piece on the back of my board is a digitized version of a 25-foot long banner painting that I did. And this is kind of the overarching theme of the Outnumbered project, where I took a bunch of different toys and painted them all different colors to say that there really isn't one defining color for each of these boy associated toys. So like for those who can't see, there's army men and toy guns or blasters and cars and robots, all male associated. But I'm trying to prove that that's not the case, that through color, I can show that anyone can have enjoyment with these toys and any child can use them. And the staple is mostly pink, but with this, I have expanded on that because pink is probably one of the most ingrained gendered colors that is in our society today. And I'm actually going to be expanding this painting into a larger series later on in the coming months, and those will be available soon to mint and have your own.
Well, that's really exciting, and congratulations on the progress you've made with that. And I can't wait to see that come to fruition in the not so distant future. So thanks for all you shared so far. I really appreciate it, Dylan. And I'm going to go a bit off script, if that's okay, and put you on the spot here because we do have a couple of minutes. And so your focus here is on, specializing in gender and sexuality, bringing greater awareness and empowerment. How do you see NFTs being a force in driving greater inclusion in society as a whole?
I think it's Web3 that really is where we can see this inclusion. And I've seen it already. There's not a whole lot of queer representation it's growing, but there's not a lot in our world right now. And I think that Web3 creates almost an equal level playing field that anyone can be a part of. And I've seen it right when I joined the Web3 space, about 6 months ago, that people welcome you in open arms and they want you to succeed and they want you to grow. I joined Twitter spaces often and a lot of queer Twitter spaces, and everyone says, like, follow, retweet everyone in the room because everyone wants everyone to succeed. The saying, WAGMI, we're all going to make it. And I think that kind of has defined a new chapter in queer history. And I'm so excited to see how queer history has changed and evolved with the evolution of Web3.
Absolutely. And, I've had the pleasure of learning from a couple of folks that have led different NFT or Web3 projects that are really looking to build inclusion in this space, particularly for LGBTIQ folks, and making sure that they have a voice in the Web3 space and aren't, left behind. And I think that, when it comes to the Web3 space, I've been amazed with just and you said it too, the inclusion in the community. And because you don't always see that when you join a new kind of online community, right? So that's great. So one final question, I hope you don't mind if I ask you, Dylan. I know that you are relatively young. You're in school still, doing your BFA in Fine Arts from University of Southern California. A lot of individuals that I've spoken with that are kind of new to the NFT space or really trying to establish themselves as new and emerging artists can find the space intimidating or really struggle to kind of enter into the space and find their voice within the Web3 community. What advice would you have for them?
Well, I'd say, I'm still intimidated too as well. I'm 20 years old, and before, making a Twitter for my art, I didn't have a platform. I still have a very small following. And so I think that the advice I could give, and that I say to myself as well, is that, we're so early, and that there will be a time where you will be represented. And I just say, go for it and keep making art and keep doing what you do. The other day I was talking to someone at my school who wanted to start an NFT series, and they were like, well, like, I don't know. I don't have the knowledge and stuff. And I was just like, you just need to do it. You just need to get the ball rolling and just go for it, because that's the only way it's going to get started, and it's the only way it's going to get done.
Absolutely. You just got to do it. It's the only way it's going to happen and get done. That's a great note to end on for those that are kind of a little hesitant to maybe put themselves out there and find their voice within the Web3 community. So Dylan, thank you so much for everything you've shared and for the great work that you're doing with your Outnumbered project and in kind of imagining the concepts of gender and sexuality and presenting them in a different way through your art. So thank you so much for all you're doing and for being here today. Do you have any final words you want to share before we wrap up this conversation?
I just want to thank you and thank everyone in the room. Thank ChangeDAO for this amazing opportunity. I'm so excited to see where it goes, and I'm so proud of everyone's boards and everything that everyone has contributed. So thank you.
Absolutely. Well, thank you again, Dylan. Pleasure to have you here. Make sure to follow Dylan in the Outnumber Project. And if you haven't had a chance, hop in the Spatial Gallery to check out Dylan's board. He was, I think, the first one to have it all up, and it looks amazing. And he did a great job telling his story and sharing some of his art on the board. So thank you again, Dylan. It was a pleasure having you.
I also want to hop in, and if you are in the Spatial, to remind you to look on the back of these boards as well. A lot of the art that Dylan spoke about is on the back of that board, and it's just really great. So just wanted to remind everyone who's actually in the virtual aspect of this.
Great, yes, thank you, Kelsey. Definitely check out, each board has two sides, explaining a little bit about the Changemaker and their story, and then highlighting some of their artwork. So thank you, Kelsey. Great, well, Dylan, that was awesome. Thank you again. So excited to see where you go with the Outnumber Project and your work, and kudos to you for the great work you're doing. So we're going to move right along then to our next Changemaker. And to those who are new to the room, that was just Dylan Weinstein, and now we're going to hop into our next Changemaker, Fiona Abood, who's going to tell us about her fascinating work that she's doing as an artist in East Harlem, New York. So Fiona, are you there? You coming in okay?
Yes.
You're good?
Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you great, yes. So
Great, awesome.
What I'm going to do is I'll give a bit of an introduction, and then we'll jump into the Q&A.
Sounds great, thank you.
So Fiona is a Brazilian-American artist that lives and works in East Harlem, New York. Her work is both innovative and socially engaged, expanding the syntax of photographic art as a means of fostering empathy and acceptance in a period of fragmentation and unease. She makes abstract pieces and portrait photography using digital and traditional photo techniques. She creates images that help us envision more nurturing relationships with others and ourselves, and her humanistic style addresses economic empowerment, identity, human rights, racism, and multiculturalism. So Fiona is the changemaker for the financial inclusion area of change within ChangeDAO's 7 areas. So thank you so much for being here today, Fiona.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited. I'm sorry I couldn't listen to the other artists. I'm actually on vacation right now, but I'm so thrilled to be in this room, and I hope I'm making sense today.
No, absolutely, and I appreciate you, making yourself available and being here despite being on vacation. Really appreciate it. Just a heads up, your mic is a little cutting in and out a little bit.
Oh,
so maybe
is it?
just,
Okay. Oh, hold on one second. Let me try. I'm going to take my AirPods out. Hold on.
Sounds good.
Oops, sorry. Is this better?
Oh yeah, that's much better. Thank you, Fiona.
Cool. All right.
Great. So let's dive right into it. So how did you become interested in socially aware art?
Okay, that question is lengthy, but I'll try to make it as quick as possible. After 9/11, and I know I'm dating myself, I was horrified at the hate crimes that were happening against Sikhs in America, and I had studied South Asia and diaspora in college, and I had a lot of Sikh friends, and I said to myself, well, this isn't right. Like this has to be not only documented, but I wanted to show Sikhs as Americans and show, the contributions they were making in American society. And I ended up photographing this man named Vishwajit Singh, and he's known as Captain Sikh America now. And he did a cartoon of a man with a turban and a beard wearing a Captain America costume. And I said to him, listen, we have to take you around New York. We have to dress you up and take pictures of you. And he became a sensation, and he ended up quitting his job, and now he teaches tolerance at schools and institutions such as Google and NASA. And the series there's documentaries about him, and we exhibited in Seattle, and the images have been acquired by various collections, and we've done so many projects together, and that's been a huge example of how political art can help open people's minds and change people's lives. So that was like my first kind of big foray into socially aware art. And then I was able to go to Sierra Leone and photograph amputee soccer players, and we ended up making a documentary about the team and raising money for them, because in Sierra Leone there really isn't any kind of support for people with disabilities. So the money went to help with job training and help support their families. And during Ebola, that was a really huge help. And it just sort of feels right to make work that has a community and a societal impact. And I can't imagine, even though not all of the pieces I've worked on have been societally aware, I feel like it's a huge part of my practice and a huge part of my identity as a person.
Well, that's amazing. You've been involved in some really cool projects and some amazing work with Captain Seek America that you mentioned, which I've actually I've seen has followed him as well before and seen some of the
Cool. Nice.
stuff on him. So that's I had no idea that you were involved with that. So that's really cool.
Super cool.
Yeah,
I
also,
love it when people are like, "Oh my God, do you know about him?" And I'm like, "Oh my God, yes, I do." It's so funny.
that's awesome.
That's very
That's
cool.
so cool.
I love that, like, that iconic American image can just like harness all of these like feelings that we have, and then connecting it to multiculturalism and understanding another culture. I think that's like so powerful to connect, like, a trope with something that we're unfamiliar with, and then the combination of the two just it helps people like integrate, like, oh yeah, like there are people that don't look like me can be American too, anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that's a great point. And also the work that you did in Sierra Leone with those that amputees from the Civil War, and doing some work with them. That's must have been a very powerful experience as well. So you've had some really cool socially aware art experiences, and that's amazing. So next, I'm curious to hear your thoughts about financial inclusion, because obviously your area of social change within the 7 areas is financial inclusion. So tell me about financial inclusion and why it's important.
Absolutely. Well, there is, I'm sure, everyone's well aware of this. There's a huge, like, the discrepancies between the rich and poor in the world, not only in the United States, is astronomical, and it's gotten even worse because of COVID. Um, I think that I was like just looking at statistics, and there was a statement that said that contemporary global inequalities are close to their early 20th century level at the peak of Western imperialism, which is a huge statement. That's from the World Inequality Report. But it's just like there's so much to be done, and I'm currently working on a project about universal basic income, and I'm involved in an organization called Humanity Forward, founded by Andrew Yang, after he finished his 2020 presidential campaign. He created this organization to not only educate and help support universal basic income pilots around the country, but to also help lobby in Congress for universal basic income. And the organization ended up helping push through the financial stimulus and the child tax credit, which, sadly was not renewed. But it's a huge thing. And statistics have shown that, like, if people who are like barely making ends meet and living below the poverty level are not helped or supported in any way, that the increased rate of mental illness, suicide, drug abuse, just the cycle goes on and on and on. And this is happening at a global scale. And the opportunities in crypto, in, NFTs, to help support people that have been traditionally disenfranchised. Not Well, we can talk about, the economic system in general, but obviously we're talking about art, so we can talk about the art world. For artists, there's some statistic, and I can see if I can find it in my notes, that it's I think, like, in museums it's 80. Hold on, let me see. I'm sorry, I wrote this down so I wouldn't mess it up. Right. So it's 80%. Okay, in the U.S. museums, in 18 major museums, 85% are white and 87% are male. So, you look at that statistic and you think, oh my gosh, like, that's crazy. And to think of, like, maybe where they're from, probably most of them are from Western countries. And I mean, should I hop into how NFTs can help financial inclusion as well? Because I've been thinking about that a lot as well recently.
Absolutely, yeah. Jump right into that. I mean,
Yeah.
you've shared some great thoughts on financial inclusion, so let's talk about the role that NFTs can play.
So all right. So all right. So on one side, obviously, universal basic income is something that many governments could provide, and there's many ways of doing it too, especially using cryptocurrency. But with NFTs, the opportunity for artists in countries that have been, haven't had the access to major art institutions like museums, galleries, art collectors, people that are like controlling the money in the art world, is astronomical. And just this one example, when I first entered the NFT space, I was teaching a weekly class, and I am going to start it again. I just have been so busy with so many different projects now that I've been out of commission with that class. But this one artist who is now wildly successful. His name is MDD, and he's from Rwanda. He started in NFTs and just like flew to the moon. Like he's now super rare. He's doing super well. He spends his money that he makes from his NFTs to help other Rwandan artists mint because of gas fees. And it's just amazing how an artist like that, who's so talented, and if you think about, like, for instance, if you wanted to show in New York how much it would cost to like send a painting all the way from Rwanda to New York, it's impossible. But with NFTs, boom, it's instantaneous, and a collector in New York can get his piece in a matter of seconds. That opportunity, I mean, that's just the beginning. I'm currently trying to convince a blockchain to like, let's start an education program, like a global education program, where we teach artists who are, now that everyone has phones, people have this access to this key piece of technology that is needed to mint art and sell art. And to think of like the global opportunity for that all you need is a phone, and you can start selling your work and making and supporting yourself as an artist, is amazing. To think of like an artist in a developing country to have access to a global art market is absolutely amazing. Obviously, the problem isn't completely solved, because there is still a have and have not in the NFT world. In the crypto world, there's a huge barrier to entry. But I do believe that there's a ton of organizations and a ton of people that are passionate about teaching and about extending this. And not to mention the fact that crypto is really, it's being spread across the globe, and nothing is going to stop it. It is just amazing. Like, even like when you look at, I don't mean to go off on a complete tangent, but like the pay to play games, like, like the fact that people are making, I think like in the Philippines there are some people that make their entire income playing Axie Infinity, which is just amazing. I don't think people realized that would happen when they first started that game. So yeah, there's a lot of opportunity, and it's super exciting, and I'm so thrilled to be a part of this like changing movement that's has the potential to completely revolutionize art and the way we consume it, and who we support, and who is considered quote unquote good, whatever that means. I think art is super, super subjective, and something that I might not like, someone else might like. And it's who's to say like what art will appeal to who. So anyway, that's my perspective. I hope that makes sense.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. No, thank you so much for sharing all that. And I think that, you said it well. You said it, all you need is a phone, right? When it comes to the NFT world, and it's just opening doors for folks that have lacked access or equal access for so long. And obviously, there's still issues of equity in the NFT space, of course, right? It is still a space that, for the most part, if you come from a wealthy background, a developed country, you're, a white male, you'll probably you are at an advantage, right? So there is still work that needs to be done there, but I think that NFTs just are so much progress that comes with NFTs when you look at the traditional barriers and gatekeepers individuals and artists had to go through to bring their works to market and to make a name for themselves. And so that's amazing. Love everything you shared there, and I couldn't agree more. So Fiona, thank you so much. It's been great hearing from you. Anything else you want to share before we wrap up our conversation today?
I am just so honored to be a part of such a rock star team of artists with ChangeDAO, I'm completely just thrilled. When I was accepted, I like jumped, bounced off the walls, and I'm like a big admirer of many of the artists, and the ones that I've discovered, I'm so thrilled to be with all these super talented people and a super talented team that's leading the way. And I really feel like this group is going to have a huge impact, and I can't wait. I'm very excited. This next year, it's been a year that I've been in the NFT space, and this next year we're going to just kill it. This is going to be awesome.
100%. We were just going to kill it this year. And, you know, you said that you're so excited to be a part of Change. I know that ChangeDAO is so excited to have you on board as well, and the amazing talent and art that you bring to the space. So thank you for everything you're doing. It's a pleasure chatting with you and learning from you. And thanks so much for being here today.
Thank you so much, and thank you so much for your podcast too. You're highlighting some really important stuff that's going on, and it's very exciting to learn about all the different things that are happening in the crypto altruism world. People that, I mean, can I say give a shit about like the future of the world? I mean, we're going to, you know, every day the news, you're like, oh God, like what's going on now? And, you know, to have this community that's so positive, uplifting, and really trying to change things and make a difference is really, really empowering and inspiring.
Well, thank you. That means a lot, and I really appreciate that. And I appreciate you, and especially since you're on vacation and you still made time to be here with us today. So thank you, Fiona. Very much appreciated. Can't wait to see all the great things that you continue doing in the future.
Thank you so much. Have a great night or day wherever you are.
Yes, a night or a day. I'm sure we have people from all over the world. So thank you, Fiona. Great. So another amazing change maker, another amazing story. Such great work being done by Fiona in the area of financial inclusion. So before we move on to our next change maker, I just want to do another kind of housekeeping item around. There's a couple more requests that have come in. Thank you so much for all those looking to get engaged. We are at this time not taking audience questions just because we want to make sure we can stay on schedule and really elevate the change makers. But nonetheless, thank you for your interest in getting involved. We may have some time at the end. We'll see how things go where we can open it up. But I really appreciate those that have been interested in getting involved. So moving right along then.
Could I just hop in real quick, Drew?
Yeah,
Sorry
of course,
about that.
Kelsey. No, please.
Yeah, thank you for your request. Thank you for trying to engage. If we do not get to you or you have to hop off or whatever, please just go and submit an interest form on our website. We read all of them. We respond to all of them. So if we don't have time today, we definitely want to continue the conversation and build those relationships. So feel free to reach out.
Absolutely. So yeah, the conversation by no means ends today. I think we very much view this as the beginning of the conversation of a very long and important conversation and community collaboration. So definitely continue engaging after this. Go to the ChangeDAO website, changedao.org, to fill out an interest form. We'd love to hear from you and to engage with you. So thank you for that, Kelsey. Okay, so we're going to move on to our second last change maker of the event, and that is Blue Moon. Blue Moon, are you connected and with us right now?
Hi, yeah, I'm here.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for joining. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well. Today, you know, we all got some very shocking news about the conflict, but all other things considered, life is good.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's definitely a very challenging day. Yeah, no, thank you for being here today, Blue Moon. So a little bit about you, and then we'll jump right into the Q&A. So you're a founding partner of Intent Art, N-T-E-N-T Art. You're an environmentalist and an artist, and you believe that we can drive positive social change through 21st century technology, and that we need to prioritize the sustainability of that technology. So I understand that your current artwork is focused on community action through the One Drop NFTs movement, to destigmatize menstruation through the Web3 community, as well as themes of self-care, sustainability, and self-awareness. And they also create content on social media about the intersection of blockchain technology and sustainability. And your area of social change within the 7 areas is energy and environment. So thank you so much for being here today, Blue Moon.
Thank you for that. Yeah. Today I think I'm going to be talking a lot more about blockchain and sustainability, but Yeah, my artwork is also focused on community action and this one drop NFTs movement. I'd really love to see get very big in the month of March, and I have a pinned tweet on my profile that's all about it if anybody's interested in getting involved. And yeah, I'm also on my I have like other public facing profiles where I make content about sustainability and blockchain. And that's with a lot of people who are mostly on the sustainability side. So that's been very interesting, I can say. Um, Trying
Yeah.
to get these messages across to people who are not originally who are not originally Web3 native.
Yeah, absolutely, for sure. Um, and I'm sure we'll talk more about that as we progress through this conversation. So obviously you're an environmentalist, and sustainability is something that's of key importance to you, and you've done a lot of work around that as it pertains to blockchain technology. So as an environmentalist, how did you first come into blockchain technology?
Well, I like a lot of other people who are not developers or didn't get into crypto uh, early on. I didn't really think that cryptocurrency was for me. I'm a woman of color. I didn't grow up in a very like privileged household, and I didn't really know that much about money. But yeah, I guess I kind of felt like anything kind of financial related was something that really wasn't for me. And I also kind of wasn't that interested in it. But I was having a conversation with Jiwa, who is another founding partner of Intent.art. He's a really talented crypto artist and also my husband. And this was like early on in our relationship, but he was telling me about how there was a project being done to make crop insurance powered by blockchain technology for small share farmers in Kenya that would allow them to automatically cash out their crop insurance without having to jump through hoops um, after their crops are damaged by the effects of climate change or any kind of like climate disasters. And regardless of whether or not that project was successful or not, a light bulb went off in my head, and I realized that we have there's so much potential with blockchain technology to solve real world problems here. And at this point, we need to be using everything we have to tackle the issues that are coming up. So it's not just about this one project that is, helping small share farmers in Kenya, which is a very specific group of people. Blockchain technology can be used in so many different ways to help a lot of different people. So the more I learned about it, the more I was like, oh my gosh. And especially coming from the sustainability lifestyle world, I had seen a couple videos about how bad crypto mining was for the environment. So I think I probably started off on like a slightly negative foot. But when I started doing a little bit more research, like checking the sources of those sources and going back, just started to find more questions. When I found answers to those questions, it dove me deeper and deeper and deeper. And, here I am, totally obsessed with this stuff, learning more and more every day. And every day I get closer to the answer that blockchain actually is going to be a very big part of the solution to climate change. And that it, it's not even as bad for the environment as it's being made out to be. So, and here I am now.
Yeah, well, that's quite the journey, and really cool hearing about that project as well, the decentralized insurance for crop insurance for smallholder farmers in Kenya. Done some research on similar projects myself, and such a cool use case, and one of many use cases when it comes to blockchain and sustainability. So
Hmm.
on that note, how can blockchain tech be more sustainable, and what are some of the use cases there?
There's so many ways that blockchain can be more sustainable. So I think the very basic thing to remember is when we're thinking about sustainability and emissions, the very, very basic thing, the first thing that people will learn is the difference between proof of work and other consensus mechanisms. Um, most people in the room know that Bitcoin was the first cryptocurrency that was using the proof of work consensus mechanism. It's very energy intensive, and that is intentional. That's how it works. And after a few years, people were looking at it and seeing that although this consensus mechanism is very effective, down the line there's going to be very serious negative environmental consequences if it's so reliant on energy, and that that energy is coming from fossil fuels, it's like extra bad. So then there are different consensus mechanisms being made, the biggest one being proof of stake. There are others also. I've heard of proof of history. I think that's what Solana uses. And then proof of time in space, even I've heard of. But most of these ones that, are after proof of work, they're using a lot less energy. And if you think about even the activity that we all have online, we're using so much energy as it is that people aren't really looking at because it's not new. But even just the traditional banking industry, for example, uses a ton of energy. And if it is replaced, at least partially, by blockchains that are super energy efficient, that's going to bring down total energy consumption a lot. Obviously, I think mining rigs, for Bitcoin, which will never move away from proof of work, these can all be on renewable energy, 100% renewable energy. A lot of this is happening because the mining rigs there's not a lot of infrastructure you need for a mining rig or a data center or whatever. You need the hardware, you need a connection to the internet, and you need the source of energy. So that means that these mining rigs can go to wherever the energy is, which is pretty cool. And so if there are renewable energy farms anywhere, it could be at a wind farm or a solar farm or like I don't know, now I'm blanking on the word, but like, in the ocean, they're using the kinetic energy there to create energy. You can have a mining rig there. So that's also pretty exciting because that means that the energy that we're using to do, everyday things, making transactions online, right now, nobody's looking at where that energy is coming from, but the crypto industry has a lot of eyes on it, and it can be transformed into renewable energy because they're expected to change, or we, are expected to change, and I don't know. I honestly don't know if it's going to be really viable unless there is a massive shift to renewable energy. Another thing that can be done is carbon offsets. A lot of people are able to calculate their carbon footprint, and like using Offsetra, for example, and paying for carbon offset projects. These projects are things like reforestation projects, protecting mangrove forests, and doing things like providing extra energy efficient stoves to people in places where they are using really unsustainable methods for cooking and heating. So these are also good. I think, though, because as much as the crypto industry wants us to think that the energy that we're using is very small, I mean, it's still pretty significant. And if we want to really reduce the effects of climate change, we need to be reducing everywhere we can. And I think that the crypto industry has the capital to do this. I think another really good way to do the carbon offsets is by investing heavily in carbon capture tech, because it's not like minting an NFT on a proof of work blockchain isn't like leaving the lights on in your house, which I would say is something that you could offset by planting a tree. It's a lot. I mean, there's a lot of energy involved there, and so we need to be investing in really, really powerful technology. So there's a lot of research going into carbon capture technology. where they're capturing carbon in the air from in different ways. All of this technology is very, very new, and just like the crypto mining, it's also a bit inefficient too, and there's a lot of need for money and for research and for scaling. So I think that if major platforms or blockchains are investing in carbon capture technology, I think that would be really great. Another thing that we're really reliant on is hardware. And this is one thing that, the naysayers will point at, that like, we only have so many rare earth minerals to extract, and this is also really bad for the environment. And electronics recycling is not very efficient. This is all true. So another thing that I really hope to see is hardware that's sustainably made, that is repairable and easily recyclable, like designed for circularity, if that makes sense. So I think these are all things that it would be really great for us to, put pressure on the blockchain community, Web3 community, to do research on and to put funds behind. But I'm happy to talk more about it too.
Yeah, well, I think.
Sorry about that.
Yeah, I think we got rugged.
It's okay.
Drew got rugged, but I
So
appreciate all of that.
Yeah, let me sort of chime in on this, because
Sure,
you and I
yeah.
have talked a lot about this topic, and I love your position. As the founder of ChangeDAO, right? Like, we chose Ethereum because it's just such a superior L1, right? I mean, NFTs were started by Ethereum. The dev community is so strong. How do we think about, other blockchains? How do we think about, like, should the artists be thinking about the blockchains and where they're putting their art?
Yes. And I think for everybody, for different artists, you're going to have different things that you are prioritizing. So, yeah, we have talked about Ethereum. Honestly, at Intent.art, we are minting on Ethereum as well. Although we are in the process of switching over to ERC 721A contract, which is going to make us even more efficient. We also have Polygon contract for some certain pieces. I think that it's all about what you value. And I think the big reason why we are minting on Ethereum, even though we are a sustainability forward NFT platform, is because Ethereum is, as you said, a superior chain. I don't think it can really compete with the other chains in the long run. And if we're thinking about sustainability, to me, I think it's a lot more sustainable to build a city where the people are, instead of like building something where people aren't hanging out there, people aren't using it, and you're going to have to end up coming back to the bigger city anyway, if that makes sense. So we're going to have utility on Ethereum that is not going to be matched anytime soon by any other alt chain. And I think the wheels are already in motion to have Ethereum on a proof of stake consensus mechanism, and then things are going to get really interesting. So yeah, I mean, if I thought that Ethereum was bad, like just as bad as Bitcoin, which I'm pretty public, I'm not like a huge fan of, I wouldn't be talking as much about these other things, the carbon offsets, the carbon capture technology, and all of that, because it wouldn't be as necessary. People aren't really that threatened by a transaction that, is the equivalent to like leaving a nightlight on for 3 minutes. So, but because Ethereum is a superior blockchain, even for art, especially for art, we do have to think a little bit deeper about how we can, make up for the damage that's been being done. Although on that note too, I think there's also misconceptions about how much of the electricity that's being used for mining and validating that's coming from renewable sources, because as I said, there's a lot of pressure on the blockchain Web3 community to be on renewable energy, and the percentage, I think a lot of people don't realize that the percentage of energy, the percentage of renewable energy that blockchain takes is higher than like the percentage of energy consumption overall, if that makes sense. So and energy consumption does not equal carbon emissions. It's not a 1-to-1 ratio. So, I mean, I do my best to educate people. And every day is a new adventure with that.
Great. Well, thank you so much for sharing all that, Blue Moon, and thank you there for David for jumping in while I got disconnected there. Really appreciate it. So many great thoughts there on blockchain and its sustainability and ways that we can make blockchain and Web3 more sustainable. So I appreciate you sharing your thoughts. I have to ask you one more question because I wrote down a quote here that really stuck with me, and I just need to ask you before we wrap up this conversation. I know we are a bit over time, so I appreciate it. You had mentioned that coming into the space, you didn't think cryptocurrency was for you, but you persevered, you found your space, you found your voice. What advice would you give to someone who feels that cryptocurrency or Web3 isn't for them?
Cryptocurrency and Web3 is just like the internet. There's a place on the internet for everybody. It's not just like the internet, it's the new internet. And there's a place for everybody. And I think the reason why I didn't feel like it was for me is because there's this idea that it's for, these like white developer guys in hoodies, and there's a reason for that. And there's reasons for those reasons. Like, it's not a secret that our society, pushes technology on boys more than on girls, and blah 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 blah. I don't think I need to go down that, so hard, but it's not like that anymore. People are coming into this space so quickly, and people are building. Just as an example, I'm a part of many, I'm in a lot of it, like the women-centered NFT project community, and even within there's even sub niches of women. I mean, there's really just going to be a space for everybody. It's getting easier and easier. The Web3 and especially the NFT community is like one of the most friendly and welcoming communities I've ever been a part of, where you can ask any question and people are so eager to help, and eager to grow and eager to see other people be prosperous. It's amazing. And I can't wait to see more people, especially those from diverse backgrounds, jump in.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for sharing that and for letting me pick your brain there. I just couldn't let that one go because I think that's such an important thing to discuss and to really make sure that the space is as inclusive as possible for everyone. So thank you, Blue Moon. It was an absolute pleasure having you here and hearing from you. Can't wait to see the great things that you continue to do. And so thank you so much for joining.
Thank you. It was really a pleasure and honor to be here. I'm really grateful for ChangeDAO and for the community that we have here. So thank you again for having me.
Yeah, thank you. Great. So big thank you again to Blue Moon. Really excited now to transition to the final change maker of the event. And I can't believe we're reaching the end of the event here. And my page of quotes from the event is now at 3. So many amazing reflections and things that I've learned, and I hope that everyone in the audience has as well. So for the next, the final change maker, Doc Peace, whose area of change is education. Fortunately, Doc Peace can't be with us today. She's en route to NFT Cabo, sorry. So she couldn't be here today. But we did pre-record the Q&A with Doc Peace. So we're going to try our best to play the audio onto the space. So bear with us if there are any audio quality issues. We'll try our best to make this work. I'm going to read a little bit of an intro about Doc Peace, who's our final change maker of the day. So Doc Peace envisions a world of unity and seeks to accomplish this by empowering others through mindset and business acumen. She believes empowerment comes through education and has teamed up with Tribex to provide educational support to the communities who need it the most so that aligned action can be taken. Additionally, she recently dropped a business expansion book entitled 5 Golden Principles Metaverse Luminaries Leverage to Boldly Creatively Express. So Doc Peace is an amazing individual who's been involved in this space in so many ways and done a great job of making sure that everyone, no matter where they come from, can be educated and have a place in the Web3 space. So really enjoyed my conversation I had with Doc Peace yesterday, and I'm going to hand it over to our wonderful friend Diego, who's now going to try to play the interview into this space. So thank you, Diego.
Yes, sir. Here we go. Let me know how it sounds. I have it all up and ready to go. If it's a little too loud, just make sure to communicate with me over there on Discord. But here we go.
Welcome, Doc Peace. It's a pleasure to have you as the final change maker of the event, and it's been an amazing event so far, and I can't think of a better way to finish it off. So, to start things off, tell me a little bit about yourself.
Greetings, Drew, and greetings everyone in ChangeDAO. I am Dr. Peace Fisher, also known as Doc Peace. I am a retired doctor by trade. I'm a Forbes featured empowerment and pivot coach. I'm a spoken word artist, and I am a podcast host of Golden Meta Sessions with Doc Peace, in which I interview NFT creatives, diving deep into their story and sharing doses of inspiration so that listeners can find their version of success in the NFT space.
Great. So tell me how you first got involved with NFTs and Web3.
Yes, 4 words. Gary V's book drop. Before that time, I had already pivoted from pharmacy to align with my soul purpose, which is this, to help others align with their soul purpose. And I was already thriving as a transformational business coach and rhythmic speaker, but I wanted more. And when I first heard about Gary V's book drop from one of my dearest and closest friends who I really trust and admire, I took action and I bought 24 sets of his books to obtain 2 book game tokens. And then I spent weeks learning all that I could. I already invested money into this new world of Web3, so I needed to learn about it. So I spent weeks learning all that I could. I reactivated my Twitter account. I began hopping into Twitter Spaces. I researched, listening. I started listening to podcasts and Googling, and I even went to Dr. YouTube. All the things. I did all the things, and I was determined to find my place. And then I discovered that there were 3 main ways to enter into the space: as an artist, as a collector, as a service provider. And I also discovered that Web3 is a place where you can express all of your multi-dimensions. So I chose to enter into the NFT space as all 3, as an artist, as a collector, and a service provider.
Amazing. That's quite the journey that you've gone through, from having a doctorate in pharmacy to now working full-time in this space as a collector, an artist, and a service provider. That's exciting. So I understand that you're also using NFTs as a way to empower the community with education. So tell me about that.
Yes, most definitely. So personally, I'm empowering the community with education via Pivot to NFTs and Golden Meta Sessions with Doc Peace podcast. So firstly, Golden Meta Sessions with Doc Peace is a time to celebrate creative expression. And in each episode, I interview NFT creatives. They share their journey along with doses of inspiration on how they got started. Plus, also tips and strategies on how to boldly, creatively express, to empower the listeners and to empower you as you achieve your own version of success in the metaverse. So some notable guests that I've had on the show have included Ja Rule and Scotty Wi-Fi. With Pivot to NFTs, this is a program that I've created that guides service providers like myself to pivot to NFTs. It's a 4-step accelerated program in which we walk through the steps together, dialing in their gifts, expert skills, and talents, and then applying that to the space, onboarding my clients quickly into the space, supporting them in building their community, and then dropping an NFT project with utility. And another way that I'm providing value to the NFT community through education is through the Tribe X. Tribe X is a large-scale NFT project in which I'm a proud Tribe X insider for this very ambitious community-driven NFT project. And it really does exist to impact lives. I want to share a little bit more on Tribe X because we're doing so much for the community. When I originally discovered Tribe X, my business bestie and I, we were deep in the process of creating our own very large-scale project that provided empowerment tools for women in particular to thrive. We wanted to give women the tools that they needed to thrive in business as well as in this new world of Web3. So when we discovered TribeX, we realized that there was definitely a synchronicity there. So TribeX is on a mission to educate, connect, and inspire a group of people that need it the most by helping those who may have been left behind in the Web3 space not get left behind as we shift into the Web3 space. We want to give everyone within our community a chance to earn money, both in the metaverse and in the real world. And we seek to do this by empowering our community with the knowledge. And one saying that I've said since I was little, actually, it's been passed on from generation to generation, is to get it going. But in order to get it going, education is that key. Education is the key to success. And you don't know what you don't know until you know. And you can't get it going until you have that education there and you're on your way to success. So we started our collection with women because without women, there would be no civilization. So it's really that simple. Women are the reason for our existence. And if you haven't seen the TribeX avatars, I really encourage that you do. I believe that I have a display of them in Spatial, so you can take a look at the avatars. But we're more than just an avatar. We're 11,111 strong, beautiful, independent, and brilliant women of color across all ethnicities. And holding one of these 3D avatars that represent tribal, ancestral, and BIPOC women gives you access to these tools that could actually be life-changing. TribeX NFT holders not only are welcomed into our community, but into our ecosystem, and they become part of our TribeX DAO and become part of our infrastructure that give its members access and resources that are necessary to recapture the full value of their contributions and earn money regardless of their technical experience. And I'm very passionate about this particular project that I'm part of because it's not just about education, but also about empowerment, and education leads to empowerment.
That's awesome. So we've heard about how we've heard about you as a service provider, and an educator. Now tell me about you as an artist and the inspiration that came with bringing spoken word into the NFT space and how you got there.
Yes, most definitely. I love this question. So when I initially made the pivot to NFTs, I took an inventory of my gifts. I took an inventory of my talents and my skill sets. And this is actually one of the exercises that I walk my clients through as well, because when you first enter into a new space, doubts come popping up, right? And you start thinking like, do I belong here? What can I offer? And once you do this inventory and you take the time to really assess, you start to realize that you have so much to give. And I realized that one of my gifts is spoken word. I wrote my very first poetry piece at the age of 12. I paired the words with a Van Gogh inspired art. And 20 plus years later, I published those words. I forgot about that little girl, that 12-year-old girl, but 20 plus years later, I remember who she was. And I published those words as an inspirational picture book for the inner child. And it's called The Midnight Show. The Midnight Show, this was my declaration, this young girl's declaration that she would one day shine her light and the world would take notice. So I forgot about that little girl, but I remembered her in August 2017. Fast forward 20 odd years, and that was the year that I remembered who I was. And I began writing poetry again. I began flowing spoken word at a local San Diego venue. And I set my intention on writing and flowing a new spoken word piece monthly in the year of 2018. As long as inspiration flowed, I was going to let that inspiration flow. And I was gonna speak my truth. And it flowed. After this poetic spark, it reignited something in me. And I was called to finally publish The Midnight Show. And I wanted to inspire creatives of all ages to express. And it actually became a bestseller in 2019.
Wow.
And in September 2021, 2 years later, I turned that book into an NFT. And in October 2021, I sold my very first spoken word NFT.
That's amazing. So as we wrap this conversation, and I love everything you've shared, I've learned so much and such an inspiring story of how you got here and what you're doing now. What can we look forward to in the future?
Yes, most definitely. There's some very exciting things happening on the horizon. Firstly, I have secured 2 pilot episodes for a TV talk show series in the Web3 space. So the goal of the show is to introduce NFTs, educate on NFTs, inspire creatives to leverage NFTs, and to highlight the social impact through utility that NFTs can have. So really excited about this Web3 TV talk show. I'll be sharing more information on that as it evolves. And secondly, I'll be starting a Golden Flow subscription offer for empowerment and support throughout the NFT journey. So earlier this year, I was featured in Forbes for a 4-step prescription to transform your mindset from powerless to powerful, even when it feels impossible. And it was very well received. This Forbes article has been very well received, and I want to provide continuous and regular empowerment to my community so that we can continue getting it going towards making our dreams a reality. So that's one exciting thing that's on the horizon, and a couple more. I mean, this is an incredible journey that I'm on, and that we are all on. And one thing that I really want to do is to take the words of Golden Resolution NFT project that I've started earlier this year and create NFT spoken word with video and audio, because this has been highly requested by my community. And you always want to try to deliver what is being requested if you can. Not going outside of your comfort zone, but this is something that I've been called to do myself, and my community is asking for NFT spoken word with video and audio. So I'm working to make it happen, and I'm working to deliver. And so this is something that's definitely on the horizon. And in the near future, actually, I'll be dropping a particular project with both video and audio this week. And lastly, I'll be flowing spoken word at all Web3 events. That is my goal. So I'm really looking forward to connecting with my NFT community in real life. IRL connections are gold.
So it sounds like you have a busy schedule ahead and a lot going on. So we appreciate you making the time to be here today and to share your story. And really looking forward to seeing all these exciting things coming up. Thank you again, Doc Peace, for being here today. Really appreciate it.
Oh, you're so very welcome. Thank you so much for having me. Keep shining, Drew. Keep shining, everyone in the ChangeDAO community. I believe that we're all gold. We're genuine, original, loving dreamers, and we're here for a reason. So let's keep shining our light. Absolutely. And stay gold.
Let's keep shining. That was the interview right there.
Well, thank you so much, Diego, for sharing that and for helping with the tech there. Hope the audio came through for everyone okay, because that was an amazing conversation with Doc Peace, and such a great way to wrap up the event and with our final changemaker of the day. So first off, I want to say a big thank you to everyone that joined in, especially those that have been here from the beginning. There's quite a few of you that really stuck through to the end, and I really thank you for being a part of this amazing experience. And so we are going to keep the space open for a bit after. If there's anyone that wanted to kind of engage or ask any questions, we will make that available to the audience. But before we do that, I wanted to hand it off to Kelsey to say some final words, and then we'll go from there. Kelsey.
Thank you. So first and foremost, we hear you that the POAP badge is having some technical difficulties. If you cannot access it, please just send us your ETH address via email. We will make sure that you receive it, or just send us a DM or something on Twitter. Let us know, and we'll make sure that you get that POAP. So that's just housekeeping items, but outside of that, thank you everyone for everything. Thank you for the change makers for showing up, making time, putting all of the work into your boards. Thank you to the build team. You guys have been amazing. This space looks awesome, and it will live, all of this work will live in the metaverse from here on out, for you to come back and visit. And so thank you so much. We appreciate you. We're happy to have you in our community. With that said, if you want to stay involved, anyone who's on the call, please sign up for email updates or submit an interest form on our website. You can also bookmark and revisit this change gallery and revisit all of the work that our first 7 change makers have done thus far. You can follow us on Twitter. You can follow the change makers you heard today on their socials as well. All of that information is still pinned to the top here. So yeah, with all of that said, just I'm overflowing with gratitude over here for our team, for those who tuned in, for our change makers, of course, and happy to have you in the community. So with that said, I'm going to pass over to David for his final remarks, and then we're just going to open it up for questions. So and comments, what have you. So if you would like to come up and speak, feel free to request, and we'll start a queue.
Yeah, I'm just going to stick around. I see Brian is still around. Some of our change makers. I just want to hear from folks who have been listening, who have their story to tell. I know folks are going to be super charged up. If you can just like kind of keep it to like 60 seconds or so, just so we can try to hear from everyone with a full crowd, that would be super dope. So let's just hear from folks, Kels.
So yeah, no one's up. No one's requested to speak. We got a lot of requests throughout the entire. Oh, there you go. Here's one.
Oh,
yeah.
there we go.
Saida, welcome.
Hello, can you hear me okay?
We can.
I wasn't expecting to get in that quick. Thank you so much. Appreciate it for the moment and for the opportunity to say hi and come up. Really inspiring stories. Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, I thought you rugged us.
I'm sorry, I didn't. Twitter did, not Twitter. Someone else.
Every time.
So,
all right.
Just really quickly want to come on and say hello. I'm Saida. I use she and her pronouns. Pretty new to this space and learning, and I'm a writer, working on introducing a couple projects to the blockchain, and I'm really excited to hear the creators that spoke and to learn about ChangeDAO and all the amazing work you're doing. I was listening, and I want to re-listen to this recording and learn more about the speakers, but I had a really quick question for Fiona. I don't know if it's okay or if it's part of the plan for audience to have specific questions for the speakers. Or is
Please
that
go ahead. Go
okay?
ahead.
Okay, yeah, I just want to say, Fiona, thank you so much. I'm checking out your work and really inspired. I was really just curious if you would be willing to speak to what you learned or learning with doing the project with the Sikh community about anti-Muslim violence and discrimination, because people know this, but it kind of came up for me because people attack communities face the discrimination they face because people mistake them for being Muslim, unfortunately, because it's very highly targeted group. So we both are in this mess together, and I really appreciate hearing work that uplifts the Sikh community, the Muslim community, and all communities who face discrimination in all its varied forms. We're all in this together, and we're all powerful together when we are when uplifting each other. So I'm curious. I'm a Muslim woman. I've experienced anti-Muslim violence. I had Sikh friends who were highly also impacted. So I'm just curious if you, and again, I don't want to put you on the spot. I know it's a very specific question.
No,
So
it's
only
totally
if you're
fine.
willing, I'm curious to hear what you learned about
Absolutely.
that.
Absolutely, Saida. I hope I'm saying your name right. First of all, I'm sorry that you've experienced violence against you. I mean, no one deserves that. So just to tell you a very interesting story, when I first started photographing Visvajit, we were in New York, and we were during the Puerto Rican Day Parade, and a lot of people were yelling at him, "Osama, Osama, terrorist, terrorist." And I turned to one of the guys who was yelling, and I said, "It's like someone calling you Dominican." And he was like, "Oh no, 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 no." And so I put it in a way that he could kind of understand. And he was like, "Okay, so tell me what's going on here? Like, what is he?" And I think it's just a matter of, I mean, obviously education, but it's just, the contributing visually to our culture as artists can definitely make an impact. And I think that was the lesson that I learned. Learning about hate crimes, really, I feel like there are always going to be the people that are going to hate, but it's definitely possible to change people and to educate people. So it made me hopeful in that sense. Like even that one person that was like, had a moment of humanity where he could like understand. And there were a lot of moments like that. There was this one boy who said to him, Captain America can be black, white, Latino, but he can't have a turban. And Vish said to him, he was like, well, from this moment on, you're going to remember Captain America with a turban. And that was like super powerful too. And again, like those little tiny experiences gave me not only hope, but this idea that by using a creative influence as well can really make an impact. So thank you so much for your question. I hope I answered it.
Yeah, you did. Thank you so much. And I think the more we create the awareness and kind of include all the communities that are being impacted in a certain way together, the more we all are benefit as a different group. So I appreciate the awareness. I appreciate the work you're doing. Thank you, everyone. And thank you to ChangeDAO. Appreciate you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for coming up and speaking, Saida. We really appreciate it. And thank you, Fiona, for sticking around for questions. Fiona, did you have anything else to add?
No, I think that's it. Thank you, Kelsey.
Yeah, absolutely. And so School for Humanity, I gave you speaking privileges. You also requested them. Did you have something you wanted to share or a question for either the ChangeDAO team or one of our change makers?
Hey guys, since I saw the title of this space, I said, oh, I gotta get in. This is where I fit. And I really did. After I listened to the discussions, I was ecstatic. And I really thought I'm the only one who is trying to make a change. Now I'm happy to see that artists are trying to use their power to touch souls. And I think it's an immense opportunity with every revolution like this one that blockchain Web3 DAOs offer for us to really make a difference and to put our shoulder in the humanity's evolution. And my project, it's about this. I will not get in very large details because the story is long, it's complex, and I want to keep as close as 60 seconds. I already sent you an email like you recommended us. I don't know if it's possible, but I would like to join this force for change. So my project is School for Humanity, and very shortly sets a better beginning for future generations, inspiring them not to make the same mistakes the human race made, governed by the circles of history, of course, but when the future generations will land on Mars. It's a gallery with pieces that I made, and everyone it's trying to make a change in the society. Very short. Thank you very much. I'm glad to be part of this space and of this community. Thank you very much again.
Yeah, thank you for coming up and sharing your story and your project. You mentioned that you sent in an interest form, so we'll be sure to be in touch and continue this conversation.
Hey,
Just
can I jump
one.
in real quick?
Sorry,
Yeah,
go
do your
ahead,
thing.
David.
Oh yeah, I just wanted to note. I mean, we heard some of the other change makers bring this up too, and my own experience. Like when I started writing out the ethos for ChangeDAO, it's like the first thing I started thinking about was just how lonely it can be when you're a change maker, and it can really just feel like uh, some of us choose it as like a profession, but also some folks just do it kind of casually, here and there, just as they're maybe not doing it full time, but they're participating in change. And that's really the idea of ChangeDAO. It's like this persistent global community where folks are always engaged in the idea, like the big, big, big idea of change, so that as change makers kind of come in and move with the cultural ebbs and flows, right? They can have that engaged community to ensure that they're heard and that they do have that trusted group of folks that will listen. And that because we heard Dylan talk about this, right? Like he just wants people to think about his art, and just and how important just thinking about things can be. So I just wanted to point that out. Thanks a lot to that, people bringing this up. Like it just really validates like my own purpose for creating something like this. So I just really feel that. So thank you.
Yeah,
Yeah,
thanks for. Sorry, go ahead, Blue Moon.
oh yeah, I just wanted to just chime in because you know, uh, similar to what David was saying, you're not alone. I'm so glad that you found this event today and that you vibed with it so hard. And it's just funny because I see your profile says creating value through content, trying to make a change in society for future generations. And if you go into the spatial event on the board that says my name and my information, it says the same thing, that Blue Moon's mission in life is to make the world a better place for future generations. And I'm also constantly thinking about what my legacy is going to be. And so, it feels like, we found the right people. And just like what I was saying earlier, there's a space in Web3 for literally everybody, even and especially the people who want to make a positive change in the world. So we're really happy to have you here.
Very well said, Blue Moon. I appreciate that. And I just wanted to jump on quickly and say thank you to everyone because I do have to sign off. Thanks for a wonderful, amazing event. If you ever want to get in touch with me, shoot me a DM or hit me up at cryptoaltruism.org. I just want to say a thank you. This shows the power of community and the great things that we can do together, and how in the Web3 space, it really is community over competition, and that we're all in this together and we are all going to make it. So big thank you to everyone. It was a pleasure. And thanks for sharing this experience with me. So I'm going to sign off now. Take care.
Thank you, Drew. You're amazing. We had someone else come up to speak. Girls Collection. Did you have
Hey
a question?
guys,
Or yeah, go ahead.
I hope you're all going well.
We are.
Actually,
Did you want to share your? Go ahead.
yeah, exactly. I want to share actually, if you don't mind, my project.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you. So first of all, I'm Fee. I'm from actually North Africa, and I have 20, and of course I'm studying. And when I have 10 years, I found myself, I really, really love art. So I start with like drawing my feelings. And actually, when my family found me drawing and have like as a passion, and really, really, I love drawing my feelings, my family, and a lot of things. Actually, my family kept supporting me and help me with, for example, buy to me and like the drawing board and the pencils and a lot of things, and they supported me, like they told me all the time keep going and a lot of things. So that's I think the second month on NFT. I don't remember exactly, but um I'm new. We can say I'm new in NFTs. So yesterday, I don't remember exactly, but I think in Monday I have my first selling, and I was really, really happy. By the way, the project on generally it shows girls, or we can say on generally your religion and how you looks. It's not important for looking great and beautiful. So the color and the origin and a lot of factors, it's not important for looking great and a lot of things. And if you see my collection, you can see every girl has a style, my cap, color, background, and a lot of things, but it's still really beautiful. So personality, I feel in love with my with my collection, and also, it's make the quality and pace for women in the metaverse and have a great future for women there. And I'm gonna happy really, really so much if have a community for women there and a lot of things. And I hope to have a great future for my collection and for all the collections, and thank you so much for listening, guys. And actually, really, I need support because I need someone just tell me keep going because sometimes I feel really, really sad about my NFTs and a lot of things, and I don't know, I don't know what's the future of my collection. But when I finish it, drawing it, I said, wow, that's looking so gorgeous. That's perfect, really. And I kept just smiling by myself. And I say that's a great one because really I feel love with my collection, you know. And also this collection I started when I have 10 years. So this girls is the same when I have 10 years. So when I draw it, I feel
Do you mean
I add.
you started drawing this collection when you were 10 years old?
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, that's great actually. Because it's my first one. So I have when I said I'm gonna do I wanna enjoy into NFTs on OpenSea, etc. I said, why not? I'm gonna draw my first drawing at all when I have 10 years. So for me, it was a great idea at all, and I really happy for it. And now I add backgrounds, my cap, because really I love my cap, and styles, haircut, and a lot of things for making it so great and gorgeous. And actually, I'm so sorry for your time. And thank you so much for listening, guys. And thank you guys so much. And if you can
Yeah, thank you so
supporting me,
much.
that's gonna be so great for me actually.
Yeah, thank you so much for requesting to speak and sharing your experience. We really appreciate it, and we'll be sure, I mean, everyone in the audience to check out your art. Um, so yeah, if there's anyone else that would like to come back and speak or who has a comment, either in response to someone who's already spoken or, what our change makers presented today, feel free to come up and request to speak.
Yeah, if Brinkman is still on, I would just love to hear from him, kind of what he's seeing in the space, from Pack to we just saw Dimitri drop, a huge project in New York to help, the food bank. And I know Brian keeps a good sort of finger on the pulse if he's around, and would love to just hear kind of what's happening from his perspective.
Just gave him speaking privileges, so he should be on soon. Or at least it says it's connecting.
That's like
I was in the
There he
audience.
is.
My app crashed, and so I was just listening. Yeah, so you just want to kind of talk about what I'm seeing in the space, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, like I think you mentioned two of the biggest ones recently, PAX, Julian Assange charity, and Dimitri's New York Food Bank Dead Ringers were both massive kind of open edition charity donation based projects that I think were huge successes both creatively and philanthropically. Oh yeah, I think I said that word right.
That's a
Yeah,
word.
that's a word. Uh, and then yeah, I mean, just today we're seeing the whole space rally around Ukraine, and how's that going to work? And I'm already in DMs with Daniil and the professor and all these people that are rallying artists around. Okay, how do we work together? Where do we send money? You know, everything's so reactionary, but everything's reactionary in a very positive way. And so, we're seeing this issue come about that will continue to happen. There's always going to be these moments in the world where people want to help, and so having methods for that and having viable ways of tracking that money effectively, especially with cryptocurrencies and the blockchain, and having the receipts to make sure it's all going to the people that it helps, is going to become more and more crucial as the space grows. And so yeah, I'm excited that ChangeDAO is going to be a part of that pathway going forward. And yeah, every day I'm inspired by all the people and stories I'm hearing about how people are giving back.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Brian. I appreciate that. And your own story, I mean, you've also contributed to a lot of these projects. So and you've been, classically trained animator, artist, etc. How did you get involved with NFTs as a force for change? Like going back to your origin, getting involved in it.
Yeah, my button's not working. Oh, there we go. I think you hear me now?
You're on. Yeah, we can hear you.
Might be breaking right now. First, I
There you
love
go.
I love that you called it classically trained animator, like I'm like a pianist or a violinist. I really love that. Thank you.
That's what I do, Brian.
Yeah, I get, the earliest I saw it was when I contributed to Coldy. He had a group show to raise money for a cat charity that took care of homeless cats in LA. And that was the first time I kind of saw how we could use the metaverse and NFT.
Brian?
Yeah, he cut out.
Okay. I couldn't tell if I rugged or if Brian did.
No, he did. He just requested again. There he is.
I see Jiwa in the room.
Phone's like, come on, you've been on here for like 4 hours. I don't know where I got cut off, but I was talking about when I first joined, I did a drop with Kitty Bungalow and Coldy. And I kind of saw the potential of kind of rallying the space around causes. And then, yeah, I learned from watching a lot of people like Josie and how she raised money for George Floyd's fund, and also, how she gave back, and how, people were doing percentages of their drops for carbon offsets. And you kind of got a feeling that, there was more, your ability to do something with the space was extremely open-ended, and the smart contracts really allow for that. And so, yeah, I think, and then through that, there's so many opportunities that come up as an artist that you get reached out to donate a piece of art for an auction or whatever, or just being active and showing up and doing talking at an event. I think there's just so many cool ways that I've seen in this space, and it's only going to become more and more.
Yeah, Brian. So, when you joined up with ChangeDAO, we completely shifted our focus as you told us the needs of change makers. And we've been marching toward that. You've been such an important voice at the table for artists, for change makers. very influential within, ChangeDAO. Would love to sort of understand some of the considerations or choices that you think matter when it comes to a platform for social change, and what you think, how you think ChangeDAO may be able to fit that.
Yeah, so I think when we first started talking, kind of my idea was, how do I create an automation so when I sell a piece, a percentage of it can go to a cause. And then you had kind of already started thinking about this concept, and we're thinking of it from the different angle of like the nonprofit side of it, and how to kind of nonprofit, find artists that make it. And where we kind of re-envision the site was, how can artists bring what they care about to the causes? And so, in my experience, when you are an artist and you raise money in this space, there's a lot of things that work against that in terms of sales taxes and coin conversions and having to keep track of the receipts. And as we've built the site, a lot of what you've been you and the team have all been very gracious to listen to my ideas and feedback and make it a system where artists can mint NFTs in a way that can educate and elevate a cause, and also not create a tax burden on the artist, but in fact do the opposite, where you're creating a tax relief because they're creating a charitable donation. And so I really love that. In terms of, if someone sells an NFT through this platform, there's three winners in my mind. There's a collector who gets a piece by the artist they love. There's a cause that gets donated the money directly. And then there's an artist who will get a charitable write-off on that donation. And so, and also support a cause they care about. And so I'm really excited about what we've built here. And I'm excited to listen to all the people that came up on stage today and talk about their stories. And it's just only going to get bigger and better.
It's so amazing. And, with that, I want to point out, like, with the 7 change makers, we never had, like, part of our contest, like, hey, you have to mint your art on our platform when it's available, or anything like that. I think, Blue Moon and I even had a conversation at one point, and I was like, no, it's like, if you ever want to, it's available to you, which is fantastic. Our entire platform is changemaker led. So even choosing the change makers, we've developed a scorecard, so that we can start to go down the road of decentralizing away from the core team. And that was really why we chose these 7, because, man, they really kind of resonated with all of us. It was a unanimous vote for these 7, and we want them at the decision-making table, kind of like a board or something like that. You think about these DAOs, and we're just kind of making up like how they come together and what the governance looks like, and operational governance and legal governance and the difference. And so with that, if you're a change maker and if you want to get involved, you can also fill out our interest form on the website. We do connect with all of those. We're holding, like a AMA or one-on-ones with each individual person. We have our first drop coming up in the very near future. It's been an extraordinary process. We are very excited to get to this point. It's going to help educate and elevate a cause aimed at educating Syrian refugees who were displaced. And what a timely topic, right? I very much want to learn more about the political refugee story. The war, a lot of the Ukrainian folks from Ukraine right now are trying like hell to get out of that country, to get to Poland. This is just the whole area. I mean, this could happen in Taiwan, etc. This is becoming relevant now, in all sorts of ways. So we're just super excited to go down this road, but we want to hear from all of you as well, right? So we want ChangeDAO to be this space where, we believe, look, that the culture is what changes things. We believe that there will always need to be change in the world, but it's the culture makers that are the ones that do that. And so we get to define who the culture makers are now. And so for us, we do provide things like causes where folks can, on chain provide a split, not only on mint sale revenues, but secondary sale revenues if they want. But from our perspective as a platform, we don't force any sort of tithing. For us, the art is enough. So for us, it's the platform fees of 2% on the mint sales, 2% on the secondary, which means that on the mint sale, a changemaker for each project has 98% to divvy up however they want. So for us, they could have collaborator artists, right? Where they could split it that way, or they could, have a cause and split it to a 501c3, and the changemaker could capture a tax deductible contribution in that way because the money actually never hits their wallet. Which is a very powerful new concept that we're excited about. But also this idea of secondary royalties, which I'm sure all of you have thought about, but maybe not in the sense of permanence. And the importance of the Ethereum blockchain is that idea of permanence, right? The lasting nature. Visa doesn't choose its blockchain lightly, right? So we think about things like 150 to 5,000 years from now, 10,000 years from now, the art that's minted on the platform will be benefiting the legacy of those change makers and also ChangeDAO itself. And those funds, right, the beauty of the treasury is that it's shared. We have an asset allocation distribution strategy type of thing that we make pretty clear as well. But for change makers, the gas fees, for example, are completely refundable potentially, right? Because for us, it's a lot of gas transactions because we're minting individual smart contracts on the blockchain, which is very important. It's not a shared smart contract. These are very individual. They cannot be taken down unless someone is able to convince the entire blockchain mining all the miners to roll it back. So that's really important to us, but folks in all around the world are going to be able to participate and access, put their art into the Ethereum blockchain and the community because of the gas fee situation and because they're able to get reimbursements for that potentially, right? I mean, this is a DAO vote type of thing, but that's one easy one that we've thought about. But another is, again, this idea that change makers want to, it's kind of like, I already brought this idea up, but Fiona kind of mentioning going into South America and like doing photojournalism, like she would have to find a client that would pay her to do something like that. And then it kind of becomes the clients. But this is different, right? Social change is different. And, this is the power of a DAO, which is a totally new organization type. And really, I think that's probably the most important innovation for Web3 is the DAO. So question the DAOs, that you're getting involved with, question the blockchains that you're learning about, think about design decisions, choices that folks make within organizations, ask difficult questions. And ultimately, we're making great decisions because people are telling us what to do and, we're listening. And yeah, I mean, we're happy to hear feedback. If anyone has any other questions, otherwise.
There's one more person that asked to come up to speak while you were speaking. Paul, the floor is yours.
Yes, thank you so much. I apologize. I saw this on my Twitter feed and jumped in, and I didn't. I'll have to go back and listen to the whole thing because it all just resonates with me, and I kind of felt like I couldn't resist but to jump on and say hello and introduce myself. Especially I saw the David. you wrote Opioid Treatment Desert, and I'm excited to read that. So State of the Heart Recovery is an agency that I founded and I'm the executive director of, and it's a 501c3 methadone clinic, which is not typically found in the United States. And I'm just super enthralled with NFTs and DeSci and wearables and privacy of ownership, sovereignty of data, and all of the amazing NFTs, DAOs. I have some great ideas about how we can, track people's progress, the client's progress. Methadone clinics are doing a horrendous job because they just, get the profit from giving the methadone and don't give care. So we deal with social determinants of health like showers and storage and washing clothes and drying clothes and food and clothing and all that good stuff, along with cognitive behavioral therapy, individual, family, group, all that good stuff. And I bring it up because I don't want State of the Heart Recovery for myself. I want it to be the community's laboratory for future evidence-based modalities of healing and how we bring housing, address homelessness and mental health, because those are the big things that we find with every single person that's showing up to a methadone clinic. So it's really funny. If you wanted to try to deal with homelessness, substance use, and mental health, where would you go that those people struggling with those three issues are showing up on a daily basis in a regularly? That's a methadone clinic, right? But what the reality is, they only have to get 1 hour of therapy a month to be a client of a typical methadone clinic. So you just take the money for dosing and that's it. You don't have to do anything to impact their lives. So I as a general contractor and a realtor in my past life, which I still have the licenses, I see a lot of opportunities for us to do housing while we care for our community members. And so if anybody has any interest in these subjects, homelessness, substance use, and mental health, I would love to connect, because I just don't have all the resources put together yet, and would love to share my ideas around the NFT that will help. And thanks for all the work you guys are doing. It's everything that we're talking about here. It's just beautiful to be alive right now with all the possibilities that we have with the new technology. So thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, the methadone clinics, and we had opened up a Suboxone clinic. We helped a nonprofit in Columbus, Ohio. They were a alcohol and other drugs treatment center, which for folks is like it's kind of like stage 4 on the process. It's kind of like the last thing before folks would be into self-care or like a AA sort of a type thing where they're still meeting with counselors. So we helped them level up to level 3, which was an intensive outpatient. So yeah, I recruited the doctors, the nurses. We went through all the certifications with Ohio, with feds. And our approach may be similar to yours. No cash accepted, and in fact, no private insurance accepted as well. And so we were aimed exclusively at the historically Black neighborhood of the King Lincoln District and folks on Medicare. Because that was the huge gap, and still is, in the recovery ecosystem. The war on drugs, the problem with that really is that they thought that it was a legal issue, or sorry, a law enforcement issue, when in fact, what the Recovery Deserts paper did is note that the system is completely broken. It's actually completely biased toward white males, because the recovery ecosystem itself was designed around alcoholism, which was primarily white males. And so when you look at the drugs, the problem is people are trapped in recovery deserts, just like they're trapped in poverty deserts, just like they're trapped in lesser known muni deserts and public transportation deserts, which all these concepts are exactly the same based on geography and broken systems. And civic leaders, right, decision makers, don't aren't really in office long enough to make any sort of measurable change. So they're all in there just trying to take little low bites of the apple and get on TV as much as they can, which is a problem. So like big drug busts and stuff like that help them do that. Whereas systemic change is a disaster. So yeah, just real quick, food deserts. If you don't live within 2.5 miles of a place that sells fresh foods, not bananas at the bodega, but fresh produce, then you're more likely to live in a food desert, which means you're more likely to be in poverty, which means you're more likely to yada, yada, yada. The same is true for muni deserts, which is public transportation. So if you don't live within 1 mile of access to a bus station, a bus stop, any sort of like public transportation, then likely to live in an area of poverty and to stay trapped in that area of poverty. And then so what we did is I literally had heard the story of like talking to folks that came into our clinic, and I was like, where were you going before the neighborhood house? And they were like, what do you mean, where were we going before the neighborhood house? Like, where else would we go? And it was this idea to me that folks, like, if it's not in the neighborhood, literally it's isolating, right? It's like you're in an island and you don't even think about services outside of it because you can't get to them. And adhering to any sort of addiction therapy is probably the hardest thing to do in the world. And when you tack on 2 or 3 bus stops and over 30 minutes on a bus ride is considered, folks just stop doing it eventually. And so, yeah, we just proved through the Ohio State University partnered with me, and they ultimately determined through this paper, which I'm a co-author of, all of just how broken the public transportation system is, and how, sorry guys, going off on a tangent, I don't get this question much or even to think about it. But yeah, super passionate about what you're doing, what you're thinking about doing, Paul, with the methadone clinic. It's another important therapy.
Yeah. I mean, we have doctors, pharmacists, nurses, DEA approval, SAMHSA approval, State Opioid Treatment Authority approval. Like, it's a miracle that we are here with open arms to invite all of the latest, greatest technology to revolutionize what treatment looks like for homelessness, substance use, and mental health. And we're full substance use disorder treatment. We treat any substance, and we didn't turn down a single person. We're only a year old, 18 months old. And so we've never turned down anybody. We've never accepted $1. We now we're Medicaid, Medicare, and all MCOs approved, which we had to write off $1 million worth of billing the first year because we're never going to get paid for that. But there's just, it's not rocket science. And the fact that we made it through this first 1.5 years as a methadone clinic, with not understanding how difficult it would be to get paid from the MCOs and the insurance companies, and not understanding that whole process was really brutal, right? So, but here we are, we survived, and it's just a great opportunity to revolutionize what it looks like, and the capacity to have an NFT that is associated with individual clients, and for that donation when you buy it to reward them with a dual signature from the treatment team that doesn't get released and goes towards a backpack or a tent or first month's rent or buying a house when they've showed 2 years of sobriety. It's a beautiful concept that I think is just ripe for a generative, evolving NFT. And if anybody has anybody to point me to that has development skills or project management skills, we're going to use heart rate variability and EEG data to create the NFTs, to see the progress, and then track their goals and objectives that they're doing on a week-to-week basis, and basically offer people hope and connection, because we're dealing with multi-generational trauma, and the only way you solve that is to instill hope and connection with people. And a methadone clinic is ironically one of the best places you could do it, because they're showing up there, but it's never getting done because it's a for-profit model that isn't interested in healing and recovery. So all the pieces are here, and the time is right because the technology is here too. So anybody that wants to talk more about it, I'd love to get into the weeds around how transparent and open I am with all the QuickBooks, all the data. Like I want to publish it all so that if anybody wants to open their own methadone clinic anywhere else and scale the solutions, that's the goal. We're not trying to monetize. We're trying to scale it across the planet.
Very cool. Yeah, I love it. Keep us posted. Definitely we want to hear about it. I mean, this is the kind of thing I'm interested in learning more about. I mean, for us, we're changemaker led. So this might be a good cause if you find the right changemaker to connect with, for our community. But yeah, super dope. Thanks for sharing the story. All right, guys.
Thank you.
Yeah. So look, it's 2:40. Yeah, over here in Seattle. We look forward to doing these again. Feel free to reach out on our website. Right now, our Discord is closed, as we pointed out, which is intentional. We're really taking a deep look at the idea of community. For us, we're concerned, right? We are really concerned about ensuring that we can create a safe space and keep trust with our community, and we just don't feel like Discord right now is the right spot for that. But we're exploring it, we're investigating it, we're looking at things like Slack as well. Yeah, Twitter or email us. We are working on this, is what I'm saying. And if you want to roll up your sleeves and work and be productive, we don't really have a lot of observers with ChangeDAO. So yeah, we appreciate everyone participating in this. And if you want to get involved, please reach out to one of us. And have a great day, everyone. Kelsey, do you want to wrap it up with anything?
Just express gratitude again for everyone who called in to listen, to everyone who built this space and made this possible, and of course to our first 7 change makers. We're so glad to have you, and this is just the start of our journey. So if you have any questions as far as technicalities with the POAP, what have you, please feel free to DM us or email us at hello@changedao.org. You can also submit an interest form. And yeah, thank you again to everyone. And this is recorded, so we'll be posting soon.